gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the North Penn School District Board of School Directors, January 6, 1998. The meeting tonight is our regularly scheduled work session. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the board to do so. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker, and this is in reference to board policy 8344.2. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies. On behalf of administration and the board, we of course start work sessions at 7:30 in the evening. We are late, and we are late because we're in executive session from 6:13 to 7:37. And if Mr. Hefner, who just walked out, had my gavel here on time, we could have started sooner. No, that's not true. It's not his fault. Took the board a little time to acclimate, pull itself together, and so my apologies for the 20-minute delay. Yes, solicitor is correct. Thank you, sir. Purposes of the executive session were for matters of personnel and litigation, and after this evening's meeting, whenever that will be, we are going to reconvene, and it'll be matters of personnel and possible litigation. Okay. Mrs. Deddy, I'm glad you're here with us tonight. Would you lead us in a pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no comma after. Okay. Dr. Bose.
High school accreditation. Many people don't know that there are voluntary accreditation associations dating back to the turn of the century, whose original purpose was to guarantee that there was some uniformity in quality and quantity of high school instruction for the purpose of college enrollment. Our high school belongs to the Middle States Association, which accredits both colleges and secondary schools in the Middle States area, including New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware. And there are several other regions in the Midwest, the South, New England, and the Far West as well, of a similar nature. Our high school's participation is voluntary, but what it does for our students, and it has historically, is provide them an opportunity to be admitted to the colleges of their choice, because there are colleges throughout this region that subscribe to the same association and conduct their admittance considerations using the same criteria. Dr. Cotter has suggested that as the association is permitting a focus more on how secondary schools obtain results, and the focus then turns to the ends rather than the means. And by that I mean, initially these associations were concerned with how many library books there were. Did all the teachers have the right certification? How many teachers had master's degrees or doctor's degrees? How many activities were there for kids to join? They were, in many ways, like bean counters, more concerned with the process than the end of the educational experience. Now, as the nation itself turns to a more results-oriented look at public education, so have the accrediting associations, which brings Dr. Cotter and Dr. Hassler to the board to explain our interest in changing the kind of Middle States annual evaluation, not annual, periodic evaluation that occurs to focus on results rather than process. And I'll speak no more as an introduction, but turn to my colleagues, Drs. Hassler and Cotter.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. As Dr. Bose said, Middle States is part of the Commission of Secondary Schools of the Middle States Associations of Colleges and Secondary Schools. That is part of a nationwide organization which has established various standards to measure the efforts of secondary schools. As a member of the Middle States, an evaluation is conducted every 10 years. And this evaluation provides an unbiased judgment of the overall school program, offering recommendations and commendations by a visiting team of up to 25 educators from other school districts and universities. It also indicates whether or not they feel the program is meeting the needs of the students and then offers accreditation. In the past, the process included a self-evaluation year, which we took a look at our programs, practices, etc., and then a 3-day visit by a 25-member team. What Dr. Cotter and I would like to present to the board for consideration is a change in this form of evaluation that would take place in our next Middle States. Dr. Cotter will give a brief overview of what the new process will include, and I will then conclude by giving some examples of how this change focuses on results and student achievement as compared to just the status of programs. Dr. Cotter?
Thank you. Middle States Commission has developed an alternative, as Dr. Hassler indicated, to the traditional accreditation process which takes place every 10 years. It's entitled Accreditation for Growth. It actually was developed by the Middle States Commission for quality schools, and we believe that North Penn High School is an excellent school and it is a quality school. It was developed for quality schools that know their strengths and their weaknesses and wanted a viable alternative to developing their school program. The new process focuses on student achievement, it focuses on the development of objectives, and it involves a cross-section of stakeholders in the development of objectives. It suggests the development of a minimum of 4 objectives that are measurable, that measure student achievement, that are associated with the future expectations of the school, that outline growth over a 3-year period, and that the objectives be linked to those of the district. Essentially, after the development of these 4 goals and implementation and developing an action plan and implementing that action plan, a committee of maybe 2 to 4 people would come out periodically to visit the school to see how implementation is taking place. We envision in the development of these objectives, as indicated, a cross-section of stakeholders. Assistant principals, department chairs, parents, students, board members, central office staff, community members, and others will partake in the development of those objectives. The discussion is quite helpful for us at this time because in many ways we're looking to the future. We're planning a new edition. We're looking to update our methodology in the field of education and the delivery of our instructional program. So we believe that this is an effective and alternative direction to go, established by this commission for excellent and quality schools.
And just to point out the major difference, what I'd like to do is give you some examples of these 2 to 4 objectives that they would like to have, or they require the district to develop. They need to be, as Dr. Cotter said, outlined over a 3-year period, but they will be evaluated every year, and they must define in measurable terms the key end results that the school district seeks to realize. In the past, what they would look at is your curriculum, and they would make a determination, is it a comprehensive curriculum? And either provide a recommendation or a commendation, but no tie to the achievement of students. An example of a goal or an objective that they would not approve is that each student will be offered a well-rounded curriculum, or that we're going to increase self-esteem of students. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for measurable academic goals. Another example in the area of technology, they would not approve a goal that would say we're going to implement technology over the next 3 years. Again, and this is what the board's been asking for, what they would ask is, if you're implementing technology, how is it going to specifically increase student achievement? And they become very specific. For example, here are some of the examples they gave for goals. By the year, let's say 2000, the graduation rate will increase by 10 percentage points. That's the type of goal that they're looking for. Or by June of 1999, the percentage of students achieving a score of 800 or better on the SAT exam will increase by 10 percentage points. Tying it to something that we're involved in every year, the state assessment, they may be looking for a goal that says by the year 1999, the percentage of students scoring in the top quartile will increase by 5 percentage points. These goals would be developed by the team that Dr. Cotter outlined. It would need to be approved by both the board and the visiting team. An example of some of the commendations in the past that Middle States provided, or recommendations after their evaluation, would be, this was a commendation in our last Middle States. They commended the school for outstanding record of academic achievement in many areas. However, that's where they stopped. They didn't specifically say what the increase in achievement may have been over a period of 10 years. They commended the district for the impressive diversity and depth of course offerings, but again with no end result being alluded to. So the major difference in this is that they will continue to take a look at the educational program and offer suggestions, learning media, student services, student activities, all the things they did in the past, but it will be tied directly to student achievement. And they will ask us to develop 4 objectives, 4 goals minimum, and then that we will track them every year for a 3-year period, and they will come back and check them every year, and then we will update and continue those. I think it ties nicely into the direction that we've been taking this year in the district by taking a look at the state assessment scores and having each building develop goals and objectives that are tied to increasing student achievement. I think this will be an addition and will actually help us through that process of focusing on some real solid, measurable criteria.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Board questions to the right, Mr. Schilling. Mr. Sherr.
I guess, just in general, would this require any specific or tangible retooling, per se, of our program of studies or implementation of our curriculum? Dr.
Well,
Carter?
I think when you look at the development of these objectives, there may be associated sub-objectives that may, if you're looking at improving achievement in a certain manner or percentage point, you may want to say, well, we need to do X, Y, or Z with the curriculum. We may need to do X, Y, or Z in the delivery of the instructional program. We may need to do something in terms of methodology, in order to improve the instruction. It's a way of trying to move the school and the district forward and to chart a course for the future.
Let me ask you, does it say anywhere in here exactly what year, are you talking for this upcoming school year?
We would be looking to begin this process next year.
98,
Formulation
99?
of the objectives.
But we've already, the formulation of the objectives?
Yeah, we would begin putting a team together to begin looking at the formulation of objectives next year.
Almost the strategic planning process, do I dare say?
You dare say it. The major difference that they emphasize in this compared to my knowledge of the strategic planning process in Pennsylvania is that they want you to look at any improvement areas within existing resources. And they will evaluate your recommendations and your direction and say those are viable, they can be accomplished by a district without added enormous expense, et cetera.
Okay, so I guess we build the foundation for this, and then we would look towards reaching those objectives and goals somewhere for the 99 school year. Is that about right? Or how long a process do you expect for us to be able to come back and say whether or not we've reached that milestone that we were reaching for?
It's really hard to say. It would depend on what the objective is, how complicated the objective is. We would have to outline some type of action plan, and it could be over the course of a number of years. There may be some things where we take a look at that we'll say, well, the staff needs more education or more staff development or a greater understanding of this, that, or another. But from my perspective, it's a way of really looking to the future, to taking a look at the entire instructional program and saying, well, how can we improve the program? We're an excellent school. We're a quality school. We know what our strengths are. We know what some of our weaknesses are already. We don't need a team of 20 to 35 people to come out for over a period of a week to tell us that. We as a group can do that internally amongst ourselves and chart our own course for the future and what's best for North Penn High School and the community. And you have a cross-section of people that will be involved in this process. Administrators, community members, students, parents, board members, etc.
I think it all sounds wonderful. I'd say, though, that the greatest frustration perhaps amongst parents and followers of school district initiatives is that it seems like we're constantly moving into a planning stage, a preparation stage, a spending stage, and somewhere it falls apart to where it never reaches the promised goal before we actually switch gears and retool for another initiative. And so the promised results, we never really get there, because as we're on our way, somewhere a new initiative comes in to replace it. And as we went through with the strategic planning process and setting things in motion there, that's why I wondered, how long would you expect for us to be able to say, okay, we've done what the community and the board's been clamoring for, we've set measurable, tangible goals, and somewhere within a year, or at least 2 years, we'll be able to let you know whether or not we were successful.
Well, a piece of this is that the goals must be written for expected growth of achievement over a 3-year period with a yearly monitoring to see where you're at. So there will be a final 3-year
Okay.
evaluation.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, and when we're hearing, this generalities that it may be longer than others and this and that, we're looking for something that if we're going to put this in motion and if we're going to invest in it, I really think we've got a lot of work to do to ensure this community that there's actually going to be an assessment and an accountability period to say whether or not this investment has actually been successful in the level of student achievement. Thanks.
Michelle?
No question.
Mr. Schubertson?
No question.
Don?
Just 2 comments. I like the idea of focusing on the future and that we have measurable goals. I like that.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
Does this cost us anything to be part of this or to be evaluated?
What was the question?
Cost.
You'll have to speak up.
I'm sorry.
In terms of cost, it would probably not cost us any more than what we spend now on our Middle States accreditation process. So it would be cost effective. It's just a shift in how we look at doing business, I think. I don't perceive any additional cost in terms of program. I could be wrong about that. But
No, I
don't
just
perceive-
mean to have them in here. If we decide to make a change in curriculum, that's our decision to make. But to ask the people to come in and do the evaluation, do we get billed a specific amount for them to do this?
We currently, during the year of self-study and the year of evaluation, I think the fee is $300. But the bigger fee was bringing a team of 25 people in for 3 days, and we paid for their accommodations, meals, etc. And this process, we're looking at just a team of 4 people coming in and reviewing our goals when they're completed. So there'll be a substantial savings in the cost that we put out before. And I think with much more tangible, measurable results that we can look at and say, we can really say how effective we are in student achievement.
Well, I like the idea of measuring student achievement. It's always been one of my goals, that that's what we do, and I support us doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Studer?
Thank you. Dr. Hester, what is the current cost for doing it?
Well, the current cost is $300 during the self-study year, am I correct? And $300 during the year that they do the actual study. Plus then those additional costs that, for that 25-member team that we paid in the past.
That was my
That's
next
gone.
question. You're going to have 25
No.
members?
That used to be the way it was done with a 25-member team.
Oh, okay.
This will be a team of 4 people that will come in.
Okay. The formulation of the team here, the district team, that Dr. Cotter was referring to. Number? number of members approximately?
There is no set number of people. I mentioned assistant principals, department chairs, parents, students, board members, central office people, and community members. There is no set number. The only criteria is to have a cross-section of stakeholders in the educational process.
Is there expected compensation for participation on this team?
No, not at this point, no.
They don't require us to
No.
compensate those who
No.
wish
No.
to participate in this. Okay, and I guess the goals, which must be measured and linked to the district major goals. What current goals are you referring to? The goals laid out in the long-range strategic plan? Goals 1, what are you, just the current curriculum, K through 12?
Basically, what we would look at are the parts of the strategic plan that were approved by the board,
Okay.
and they would focus mostly on curriculum and
Okay, now
instruction.
that was only 3 areas though, right? There was
Curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Staff development.
Staff development and assessment.
And assessment. Okay, so outside of that, I'm gonna be really focusing outside of that focus area, those 3 areas. Okay. One of the goals, just off the top of my head, hearing you speak this evening, recalls to mind a phone call that I got over the holiday. I spoke to Dr. Hasser about it today. I'd like to just share it with the board if I may, Mrs. Mango. I received a phone call from a local relocation employee finder, I don't know what you call it. Specialist, yeah, relocation specialist. And who had been bothered recently by the constant barrage of negative press, if you will, media coverage here in the North Penn School District. And called me simply because in helping to find relocation here in this area for a family coming into our area, she found that the recent 50 National Merit Scholars who we acknowledged last month was not only a significant achievement by this district, but one that she felt should have really been focused upon and even more importantly, promoted better by this district. I feel that one of the areas that we severely lack is self-promotion, because we do have a significant fine district here with many students whose achievements are numerous. And I feel that we don't go the extra mile to promote those achievements. And I would hope, and I would suggest that that is one goal that is included. I don't even know if it relates to this for the accreditation of growth, but I think it certainly relates to how we promote ourselves here in the district, and how we look to the outside world. And I think that that's probably been one of the major lacking areas here. So I just want to bring that up because this woman made me very proud that those 50 students that was a significant achievement, not only just here in this area, but in the entire state of Pennsylvania. And I think that that's something that the board needs to be made aware of. And I would hope that we can do something to better the way that we promote ourselves in the future and our students' achievements in the future. Thanks.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, just a couple of questions if I can. You're talking about this being an alternative method of achieving accreditation. Are they going to do away with the Middle Atlantic States Association method, or you're going to have the option?
There's a choice. You can do the what, if you want to call it traditional, or the way that it's been done over the past 10 to 20, 30 years. You could still have them come in and just evaluate program, or you can go to this. I don't know what they will do in the future, whether this will become
Well,
a process.
I guess that's where my question is, because we recently, within the last few months, I guess last summer it was, we changed the method of testing. We were going to go to the assessments test, the Pennsylvania assessment test, as opposed to using the Stanford test, I believe it was. Is this in conjunction with that? Is this a part of that?
No. I think it's part of the movement of providing better data, that's all, but it's not part of
Okay.
changing assessments.
Well,
I think it's in response, I think this was an outgrowth from a number of quality schools in the Philadelphia southeastern region that said, you know, we've gone through this middle states process, you know, several times over. And really, how have we really benefited by doing this traditional process of bringing a team of 20 to 30-some people in? And I think the schools were looking at that whole process, having gone through it 2 or maybe even 3 times in the past, and saying, you know, we really didn't benefit much. It was a real exercise for us. You know, they give you a booklet of questions to answer, you know, as Dr. Hassler indicated, even to the point of how many closets do you have, you know, how many of this and how many of that, and it's counting, you know, things in a lot of different ways. And I think in retrospect, when the districts were done with the process, they said, gee, we really didn't gain a lot from it. We gained some recommendations, but even the recommendations that we get really aren't real specific. And this is kind of a way of focusing on a few things and trying to improve a few things every few years.
so what we're really looking for is, we're really looking basically for internal gratification or internal improvement, really. We're not being required by the states to do this. This is something we're undertaking on our own to make us feel like we're doing a better job.
That's correct.
In conjunction with this, will we be looking at adding courses or dropping courses or improving the courses that we offer? I'll tell you the fear I have is anytime we bring a big committee in to get involved with the process, we bring in a whole bunch of ideas, which is good. But then, you know, we may have some people who are going to want to maybe offer some pre-college courses, and let's offer, you know, let's drop this course and drop that course. May want to do a whole entire review of what we're offering. And I can really see that as being a monumental task, and perhaps even being a little bit of a war, because I think we have a pretty good variety of course selections that we offer right now. But you know, sometimes we get into a situation, if it ain't broke, you know,
The key to
why don't we fix it, you know?
The key to this, again, would be because they're measurable results or measurable goals.
Okay.
If our let's say graduation rate would be one of those goals. And we would take a look and evaluate, why isn't it where we want it to be?
Okay.
Then
That's
maybe,
fine.
what do we need to do?
Okay.
Or if
But
our math performance isn't where we want it to be, then we need to look at our math program and say, are we offering the courses we should?
Right.
Is it instruction?
Okay. Right.
Is it staff development?
Okay.
But it's not a carte blanche to
Okay.
say, we're just going to add courses. You look through the eye of the results, and that directs you to what improvements you may be making.
Well, I don't have a problem, but I think you know where I'm coming from, that, you know, sometimes we get carried away a little bit.
The nice part about this is it focuses you right on the results, rather than coming in and just
Right,
saying, geez,
right.
our program is good, but we want to add this,
Well,
and this.
I think that's good, because I think the only way you know if you're doing a good job is if you accurately measure it. I mean, that's something that I've been, you know, talking to you about, I think personally, for everything you've been in. The only thing I would ask is that, I know you gave us a brief overview tonight, and your presentation was rather swift, to say the least. I would just like to see a little more documentation, a little more detail, you know.
Sure.
Perhaps you could give us something on what you discussed tonight, so I tried to take notes as fast as I could, but you both really went kind of quickly.
We'll provide the packet that
If
we
you
have that
could.
outlines it, sure.
But even with perhaps some of your own presentations, so we understand a little bit where you're coming from too, because it seems like it's going to be kind of a flexible program, I mean, from what I can gather from just your brief presentation. But yet it is going to be focused on student achievement, and that's what we're all looking for. I agree with Bill. Thank you.
Are we tied into, once we establish what those goals are, Dr. Potter, and submit those, and we go into the process and they come in and evaluate us, what happens if we are unable to achieve any of the goals that
Well,
we have laid out for us? Is there any kind of?
There's no penalty to that. It's a matter of if you don't achieve the goals that you set out or the standards that you've established for yourself, I think as Dr. Hassler indicated, I think you look at that again and say, well, why didn't we? Why didn't it happen? If it's a math issue or a reading issue or if it's an achievement score issue, you take a look at that and ask yourself the hard questions. Why did it not happen? And then how do we fix it or improve it? It focuses on achievement, and it's a continual type of thing. We're always continuing to look at achievement and improve, you know, the performance of our students and the district overall. That's what this is about.
But there's no risk to
No.
losing accreditation
No.
if we're unable, for whatever reason, to make this change?
Not at all, not at all.
I think one of the nice things about this is that, as I said before, it ties into what we're currently asking each of the buildings to do, and rather than wait 3 years to find out if we achieved it, we would look at it on an ongoing basis. You know, I said 1 year at a time, but I would, if we're really going to become results-driven, you need to say, okay, after a 4-month period, where are we? Are we getting closer to the goal? If not, why not? So that after the 3 years are up, we'll be pretty sure that we've reached where we need to be.
Will you be taking into consideration our current budget, our projecting out possibly for the budgets that will tie into these goals? And will that also be, maybe not a part that is submitted for accreditation, but will that be at some point referenced in your final report, or do they even care?
They will look
about
at,
budget?
they will look at your plan of action to see if they feel it's feasible. In other words, what they're not looking for either is to say that we need to add 50 teachers and we need to add 12 courses or whatever. I would see it just being part of our ongoing budgeting process. When we sit down and develop our staff development plan, this will be part of it. So it will be part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, and should just be part of our normal budgeting process.
To go back and answer one of your previous inquiries, I met with one of the directors of the Commission on Secondary Schools, and my gut reaction is that this option is not afforded every school district. That he said we would be a good candidate for this option because he knows of the quality of the district and the quality of the programming here. Other districts may still have to do the traditional approach. We have this option available to us.
Does that in any way have a relationship between the variety as far as the vocational, the live to learn, all of those, the VOTEC are tying with that? I mean, did that make us a better candidate for
No,
this alternative?
I think a lot of the things you just mentioned have occurred since the last Middle States accreditation process.
Right.
We, in the last accreditation process, we came through with flying colors. We had a stellar report, and on the basis of that report and reputation, we're afforded this option. Many things have occurred in that 10-year period, though.
But there wasn't one,
No,
it was basically based on our
yes.
previous, I'd like to get a copy of that report, Dr. Hassler, if I may, I've never seen it.
The previous report?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
sure.
Are we basically a pilot school in this program?
No, there are other schools that are currently involved.
This isn't a pilot program.
This isn't a pilot
No,
program.
this is not a pilot program.
Just from following up, when you brought up the Middle States evaluation results, and you said we were a stellar school district, I can't recall that report and those results coming forward at a public forum. Do you know, is there anyone that can verify just how detailed the report was when it came forward and how long ago that was?
I have the green sheet from '89,
89.
and it's every 10 years.
Oh,
It's lighter green than it was. And the report's attached, which basically just lists the commendations and the recommendations.
I lived in,
Whoa.
I lived in a community when that took place, and I remember reading a lot of the publicity surrounding it that was released in the local newspaper. And-
Right, back
And the
then, I
publicity was
wasn't-
very, very positive.
I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking that far back. I'm thinking a couple of years. Are you telling me that when we're looking to approve, even though it may be a 3-year process and we may go through this, is it 10 years away before we actually have a middle states evaluation report?
Every 10 years.
It doesn't take 10 years.
Yes, he's saying no.
It doesn't take, it occurs every 10 years, but you get the report the year that they do the study in the traditional method. In other words, you did your self-study 1 year, the following year they came and they do the study, they give you the report that year. You're supposed to use the next 9 years in order to implement the things, and what happens is it gets lost in the shuffle.
That was my initial concern,
Yes.
and I'm just looking for them, after that, they give you an evaluation with their recommendations, and then 9 years passes before you know they're coming back knocking at your door to see how well you did?
No, they would come back, I think it was approximately every 3 years, and just say, did you do this, this, and this? And they would write up another report and say, okay, you did this, this, and this. You still need to do these things, and that would just turn over and turn over. Whereas here, we'll have our own look at how effectively our students are achieving. And again, I look at it more as what we'll be doing on a regular basis ourselves in all our schools.
Who actually has ownership of this middle states evaluation process?
The school.
Federal government? No, who?
Well, it's an
Middle
organization.
states evaluation, who's actually the people
It's the
behind?
It's the Commission of Secondary
It's
Schools.
a voluntary association.
Made up
Of members
business
Educators?
Are they in?
from the states who are contained within the geographical area. I think I said New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, I believe are the states in the Middle States
No, I
Association.
know that, but are they educators?
I can provide you a list of who those people are. I have a copy of that in front of
I
me.
mean, sometimes you get so used to hearing these names and titles, and then when you get down to it, you really don't have a clue as to the substance of the organization itself. It just has a name that leads you in a certain direction, and when I hear a 9-year process following 3 years of activity and planning and et cetera, and then a 9-year lag time, before you repeat this cycle. Okay, thank you. I'll yield to
Okay,
Madam President.
gentlemen, are there any points along the way that aside from setting aggressive goals, there's going to be some disclosure on where they view weak areas or trouble, and that they be very honest about what that is?
Yes, they have a process where they will evaluate other areas such as the educational. They'll give us an evaluation of the educational program overall, of our learning media, student services, student activities. They rate each, they have, I would say, 5 to 10 indicators under each one of those, and we'll rate them 1 to 5.
Will they-
So
I'm sorry.
that'll be part of the report, and that would be part of what we would provide to.
Will they also assess the quality of personnel, teachers? Not just curriculum, not just students, will they be assessing teachers?
Well, in the past, what they would look at would just say that the staff has received appropriate staff development. And again, it was more nebulous. It's a dedicated staff, a hard-working staff. When I provide the packet, I can make sure I highlight that area of what they'll be looking at.
In the strategic plan that was submitted to the state, one of the most important parts of the submission was in the preamble, the proviso that all goals would be attempted on, with the disclaimer that it would be based on the ability for the board to budget and pay for the recommendations. Will that be added to the these goals and recommendations?
That would be part of this.
I think I know that was perfect legal language, and if that was extracted from the strategic plan and inserted into these goals, it would give comfort to the board.
Sure.
I know that when we made the changes in reorganization with Dr. Mangano, when Dr. Bose, I think, was pretty aggressive in wanting a change from the strategic planning aspect of that job to changed over to what we have Dr. Robinson for, which is assessment. So we were warned back at that time that these movements were coming at the state level. So I think it's good. It addresses stagnancy, and I think that the Mid-States accreditation just looks at status quo. I guess they're really here to check on whether or not we're a distressed school district or not. And as long as we're not distressed, then they just pass. It just passes, and there's no real effort to see if we can do better. So I think it's an attempt, at least on a 10-year basis, to address stagnancy. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your time. Any questions that you would have on this specific subject area, we'd appreciate if you come before the board and your name and address, please.
Hi, Marla Darcy, Upper Gwinnett. I think that the idea of having measurable goals is a very good one, and that certainly can't hurt, and that certainly can only serve to improve things. I have a couple of concerns, though. One thing is I wanted to ask, the study that we're talking about, or the accreditation process of middle states, I believe we're talking about the year that the high school won the blue ribbon, is that correct?
No, it was, I believe, the accreditation process occurred prior to then. It was 10-some years ago. We're on actually a delay because of the construction that is taking place at the high school. Normally, this year would have been our study year for this whole process. We delayed it a year simply because of the construction that was taking place and some of the disruption that would occur surrounding that.
But the last accreditation was 9 or 10 years ago. What was it?
Now, the report is November of '88.
88, did you say? Now, that wasn't the year that the high school received the blue ribbon?
I'm not sure.
What year was that?
91.
Well, 91 was when we submitted it.
Okay, so 91 from 88. So as a parent in the school district, I fully support the idea of going for 4 measurable objectives, but I also would like to request that we go through the typical 10-year accreditation at least once more, because I would like to see, obviously something changed between whatever those years were, 88 and 91, and I would like to see how we're doing in comparison to those 2 previous reports. If we find that we're still a blue ribbon high school or whatever, then we don't need that as a measure anymore, but I would be very curious and would want to know that information.
Mrs. Darby, maybe there's some confusion. There's no relationship between the National Blue Ribbon Excellence School Award and the Middle States Association.
That's not part of the same, okay, what was the blue ribbon
They're not-
for then?
That's a national award given from the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Education.
Okay, and how, are we going to be involved in that again, or is that they choose you?
You may choose each year, it's offered to apply for it. And I just want to reassure you and others here, there's no connection between the Middle States Association and that National Excellence Award.
Okay, okay, thank you for that clarification. Then, is that a possibility that we'll be applying for that so that we can see, how far we've come or where we need to go?
You can only apply for that every 10 years. In other words,
Okay.
once you receive it, you can reapply 10 years later.
Oh, okay, so that might be something in the next couple of years that we may consider doing. Okay, and the only other thing is I have a concern about when you talk about measurable objectives, I just have concerns about how, if you don't measure up to those goals and they're not achieved, where I guess I have fears that it'll wind up a retribution process, that administrators will be blamed. I guess with the push for performance-based pay increase and all that, I have concerns as a citizen of this being used as another tool to hold over administrators' heads, and I just want to voice that concern. Thank you.
Anybody else, please? Yes.
Hi, my name is Nia Campbell. I'm from Lansdale. My question is, will the Middle States Committee evaluation also involve extracurricular improvements? For example, the improvement of our track at North Penn?
Well, one of the areas that they do look at are the overall facilities. They don't specifically, up front, they won't specifically say this is what we'll look at and evaluate the track, but they do look at all facilities.
Thank you.
And Nia, that's something that, you know, as a high school principal, as part of the capital improvement process, you know, as you look at the budget and you prioritize, you know, the facility as what you need completed or done, it's a process that we go through each year, looking at the facility and saying, these are the things that need to be repaired or replaced or fixed, and we prioritize those and bring those forward and take a look at those each year.
But Nia had a very good question. Does it address the sports, the activities, and whether we're
Yes,
in
yes.
compliance in Title X?
Yes, we'll take a look at everything.
Thank you very much.
Good question, Nia. Thank you very much. Anybody else, please? One more time, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you. Dr. Potter and Dr. Hassel, just one thing. The last time we had a committee like this put together, I heard the list of people that have to be shareholders. Last time we had a committee like that, there was a question on teachers and whether that was an extra duty assignment. Could you make sure that that is very, very clear before that committee is started, so that nobody is on that committee under any false pretenses or under some other intent on pay?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, folks. Good questions around. Dr. Bose.
I think that either Mr. Stravinsky or Mr. Hill or both might want to talk about the next item, which is a policy matter, and they, both gentlemen serve on the board's policy committee. The policy has to do with internet use, and as I think most who have followed our development of a plan for technology recall, we indicated early on that it would include, technology would include the introduction of internet in the school district in cooperation and in partnership with other agencies, including the North Monco Technical Career Center and the intermediate unit in the county as well. As we prepare to install that technology commencing in North Penn High School and eventually the middle schools and the elementary schools, we will need a policy on internet use. And so there is one before you. It's a part of the packet our guests have picked up, but it's undergone some change since then that I'm sure that is Mr. Stravinsky with us. So I'll defer to you, Mr. Stravinsky.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. The Community Relations and Policy Committee was charged with developing an acceptable use policy for internet and the North Penn School District computer network. First, I guess we should start off with noting that most school districts in Pennsylvania, while overwhelmingly encouraging the use of internet as an educational tool, are moving quickly towards the use of an written acceptable use policy to protect themselves from legal problems. Second, while no acceptable use policy can guarantee that legal problems won't arise, there is a growing consensus that such a written policy can reduce legal risk from students using the internet. The purpose of the policy was originally designed to serve as a statement on appropriate and acceptable use of the North Penn School District computer network, including the district's internet connections. The educational purpose was designed. The North Penn School District network policy is to define how technology, including the use of district computers and the internet, will be used to enhance school curriculum and serve as a resource for improving, extending, and enriching the teaching and learning of the North Penn School District. After some extensive conversations, and I apologize to the public because they don't have the latest version. I didn't get it to the district till today. We met yesterday on the committee to talk about some of the concerns that we had, and unfortunately the public doesn't have the most recent copy, so bear with us on that. We recognize that the internet's potential for expanding the scope and volume of information readily available to students. Students who were once limited to approved text and school libraries as resources now have literally access to worldwide information. The original goal of this policy is to protect our children. I want to open the board discussion on 6 items that we discussed as a committee that we think should be included among any provisions that we design as an acceptable use policy. 1, was internet access should be limited to specific days and times when supervision is available. 2, access to internet is confined to a limited number of school-based locations. 3, the terms of access are consistent with education authority and the functions of the schools. 4 was a mandatory training program on internet use before access is permitted. 5, define penalties for unacceptable uses. And 6, a parent-guardian permission letter. I'd like to kick off the conversation here with the board and the public too in these areas. These are where we needed as much clarification as we can and some input from board members on what we'd like to do and how we'd like to expand the policy as far as we can take it. The reality of this is we just can't foresee every possible contingency. But the idea here is to give students a basis that they understand exactly what their responsibilities are.
Okay, first of all, let me make everybody aware, if they're not already, any policy accepted by the board has to go through 2 readings. Solicitors of 2. So this is just a start. Mr. Sierpinski, I am aware, was working all through the Christmas holidays on this with his committee. I know that he's done considerable research with what other school districts are doing. And so this, I can confirm that this just came in this afternoon. So there's going to be time with this. This is not going to be rushed through quickly. This is going to be open for much discussion. But there is considerable work here, and it's pretty extensive. So if we can start the board questions, then this time to the left, Mr. Mosey.
Well, I serve on the committee with Mr. Hill and Mr. Sierpinski, and we did meet yesterday, and we had some additional discussion. At that point in time, I also gave Mr. Sierpinski a copy of the internet policy, which was approved at the JOC, the Montgomery County Technical Career Center. So it's not a final document. It is, as you said, it is one that we continue to work on. I commend him and Mr. Hill because they did most of the work. And it is something, you know, we're looking to make it as tight as we possibly can, but anyone who's familiar with laws and litigation, sometimes the law isn't tightened up until there is litigation, and then it's corrected and it's tightened up a little more. That they're loosely written sometimes, you know. But in this case, I think he's dotted the i's and crossed the t's, and I think it's something that, you know, perhaps we will have to fine tune a little bit, but I think it's a good document myself.
Okay, Solicitor, have you seen the document?
I have.
You have, okay. Mrs. Krieger.
Yeah, Mr. Sierpinski, could you just explain to me quickly, since we just got this evening or so, where, is there any place in here which defines account holder?
Yeah, under privilege, basically what we have, how we define account is access to the North Penn School District network.
Okay, well, could we just discuss that a little bit? And I'd just like to
We can,
offer
but understand, we haven't really totally defined how we're gonna have access, actually what we're gonna be using to have the access, so we're not sure how that's gonna proceed. That could be in you know, a lot of ways. It could be an account number, an account name. We don't know exactly how we're gonna proceed with that until we get with the administration to see how we're gonna work the library renovation.
Is your thinking more along the lines of, let's say, the current SNAP program for food service, where the students have an established account for the purpose of buying lunch or charging lunch?
It potentially could be. The original designation of an account is access to the network, and how we define that will be coming forth later, probably mostly from the administration on how we're gonna do it.
Okay.
Because that hasn't even been designed. One of the problems we face here is we're developing a policy before we actually have a way to implement it. In other words, we don't have it, we're not drawing from our own experience here, we have to draw from everybody else's experience.
Well, and see, that was one of my concerns with the current library upgrade, with the new equipment that we've purchased. There's 60 new computers going in there, and it was told to us that it was anticipated that every single one of those computers would have internet access, and it made me take pause because I don't know anybody who has a computer that it doesn't cost them to use it. And it costs a lot of money to go on the internet, or at least in my mind, I think it costs a lot of money. Just as in my mind, it costs a lot to make telephone calls to my family out of state. But that is something that I would like the board to consider is the cost involved with providing internet access and how we want to be able to provide that access in both a way that's affordable to the community and to the students.
My biggest problem with that, and we had that discussion during, both Don and myself and Pat and
We
myself.
had it yesterday.
Yeah, we had it yesterday. The problem with that is that we're not that far ahead yet that we can define exactly how that's gonna be used. That's our problem.
No, I know, but it's just around the corner that we're gonna get ready to go out for bid for that equipment, so.
And I'm not sure if that's under policy or under technology.
Well, let me just speak to a little bit. We're developing a policy here as to the use of internet. Overall use,
Right.
yes. We're not speaking to here about how many computers in the high school are going to have internet and how many are not going to have internet, or how, that, we're talking about once you're on internet, what you can do and what you can't do and how you can use it. And right now, I don't think all 60 computers are going to have access to internet. We never said that because it depends how many phone lines we bring in and how many, for every internet access, you got to have a line.
I see.
And it's not practical to really make all of them accessible internet. There's not that much need at this time. But that's not a yes or no answer. That's something we got to develop, but that's nothing to do with policy. Policy is the how to use it, what your limitations are, and things like that. And is related to account number. An account is, as Mr. Spinski has indicated, we haven't defined what an account means, but we have to have some way to assign each student that's going to be allowed to use internet some means with their name, number, or somehow to tie them down so we know whether they're on the internet, how long they've been on it, and where they've been at, and if there's been any abuse to it, so we can take them on or put them off as it requires. But those things are still to be defined. Right now, we're trying to get the general parameters, and that's what this
Okay.
rough draft
So
is
let's
going to show us.
trying to still get back to you after we.
Absolutely, this is the first
Yeah,
reading.
It's not even the first reading.
Oh, okay, this is
No,
just
Oh,
a
no.
presentation.
No,
Okay.
As I said to you, and Vince and I met yesterday, I already had another copy of what the
No.
Career Center's going to use, so
Right.
we could even make some changes.
This is
I
not-
think what, to understand better when you talk about account, you're almost talking about a password. You almost assign a
Yeah,
password each
we
individual.
had to assign account as the
Yeah.
only definition we
Right.
could, which was
Right.
access.
And
How it
if
happens.
everybody else does, everyone else
We couldn't identify it any other way. We just had to
Folks,
identify
I
it.
need to remind all of you that it was very, very clear in the fall that you were not going to allow internet in the school district until the policy was there first.
Right.
You made that very clear, and I think this is what this committee is attempting to do. Setting a policy in place when you're ready, so that then tackling internet.
Ms. Magel, if I can, there's two things that came to light also since Mr. Sherpinski and I had our meeting. The VOTEC the Technical Career Center, has run into a little bit of a problem as far as getting internet. Something to do with the classification. They're classifying them as a private school. Private institution as opposed to a public school. I got a letter from Dr. Irwin, and he is investigating another option. And I spent a lot of time,
Well, if they're a private
we were
institution, I
gonna
want my
use-
tax dollars back.
We were going to use their line. We were going to tap
Right, their
into their
T-line.
line. Dr. Irwin sent a letter out, it was in our packet, where he is disturbed because they have classified them as a private institution and want to charge something like $1,400 or something for this line. And he stated in his letter, he's very upset and that he is going to pursue other options. So they've been put on hold, so to speak. Secondly, in working on the technology committee, and I think in this case, we're going to have to work rather closely, in talking with other schools. In fact, Mr. Sherpinski and I are going to visit McFacton next week. That has been recommended to me by certain facilitators in these schools not to put it on 60 or 70 computers, that in order to handle it and police it and make sure it's used properly, just designate a certain amount of computers that are going to handle it. And because there is great concern, everyone's walking on eggs with this thing as to, what can possibly happen. There's a lot of things out there.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, having just received this, there's a lot of questions that I know you can't answer, otherwise you would have. But the biggest thing that I think we have to work on here is control and enforcement of the access.
Sure.
and unfortunately, I have absolutely nothing to offer to help.
Thank you.
That is, I mean, the legal language of this and that can be worked
Yeah.
out, but it's the control and the access and the enforcement that concerns me.
Right.
And the enforcement part, Pat and I had a long discussion of this, because a lot of school districts approach this in a couple different ways. They have defined misuse policy, or penalties. You know, first offense, second offense, third offense. And Pat and I discussed that in detail, and our biggest problem with that is, you know, should we act in the way that the law works, that the severity of the action determines the penalty. And, you know, I would hate, and this is very, you know, this is out of context, but I would not like to see somebody, you know, put a computer virus on our network, shut us down, and then they go, well, my first offense, 30 days, you know, provoked
Without
abuse.
access.
Yeah, I mean,
You're
so,
hurting the rest of the
we had that discussion, and that's one of the reasons why I need board input on how people feel about that, because I would rather tie this policy to the action and let the administration decide the penalty.
One thing going along with that is that as this working document, and let me reemphasize, this is a working document, so, you know, we have a copy here tonight, the board has a copy of a working document, and in this document, as all documents somehow get distributed and get around. Keep in mind, it's a working document, this may look 100% different between now and when we have our first reading, but I digressed a little bit. What I really wanted to say was that as this working document is proceeding, we are also sending copies to our solicitor as we go along to make sure that we're staying within the legal binds of what we can and cannot do, and what legal restrictions as first right amendments and all these other things you get into, we have to be careful with. So as in conjunction with the work the board is doing, we're asking the solicitor to keep up with us, and so we don't get off on some deep end, or set some penalties, or set things up we can't enforce.
Okay, Mr. Shapinsky, I'm just reading through this, and it relates to the question you hear now. I know that, Mr. Allen, you're still with questions. As I read through this, I'm assuming that any possible offenders are kids. You know, they're not the only users.
No,
Is it
we
clear
extended
here
this, yeah, we extended
that
this to
this could be
staff.
everybody?
Anybody.
User. That's why we use the term user and account, because we want to do it included staff.
I believe even assign account number to teachers and administrators.
Yeah.
Okay, because it says here that, you know, one specific infraction here is to bring it to the attention of a teacher or an administrator. What if they're the offender?
Well, there again, it may have to be some of the language has to be
Yeah,
changed.
I mean, we
And
might
are
have
the
to have a system
punishments the
administrator.
same for kids as they are for adults? And is there a requirement if there's a penalty if they're a minor? As, you know, we have 18-year-old students. Doesn't matter if they're a minor and not an 18-year-old.
And that also came up under the parent guardian letter for
Right.
permission to use, because we don't have to have that from somebody else.
Okay. Mr. Allen, do you have any more questions?
No, but you brought up a good site of a teacher in detention.
There you go.
No, I have no more, thank you.
All righty. Mr. O'Donnell.
Nothing other than compliment the committee on doing a good job. I think it's a great draft. Very comprehensive. I read it today when I got it. Very good. I really do welcome the public input.
Sure, a lot of work. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to whip past you because you're committee members. Mrs. Sharp.
Okay, I have a memo attached to this that leads into to a set of 4 pages, which it says it's a computer network and internet policy. Leads in by saying these additions to the original draft will be coordinated before the, quote, new draft will be forwarded to board members. Now, am I to say that right now, what I received here at my seat
That
is
is now
20 of
the
8,
original draft.
not to be, it's
Not
not
to be
expected to
confused.
be
No.
incorporated into
No.
what I received 10
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll commend the committee, although I have no clue what you've written here. And
Well,
quite
they were
frankly,
successful.
if you'd started with me, I
did the
would have
best we
made 2 suggestions. A, either we remove it from the agenda, because we have not received it prior to coming here today, or we recess so that copies could be made for both the audience and other interested parties, and we as a board could sit here and actually read what we're supposed to give our opinions on. I don't consider it a legitimate work session discussion when I have to make a choice between whether I sit here and speed read through a 3.5-page document or whether I listen to the dialogue that kind of gives me a feel for what I'm supposed to be seeing here. And this is a very
It's tough.
important issue.
It is.
And
We were given 13 days to do it.
Well, the thing is, I got this.
And I had no clue that this was gonna be on the agenda
Right,
tonight until I got
this-
my green sheet.
Right, I got this 10 days ago that gave me a board policy that I did read. And I took very seriously trying to read it and trying to see, and not expecting to be an expert to catch what isn't in there. But I had no clue
Okay.
someone else was working on
We had a
another
suggestion from
policy.
Pat and Sharice that we
And-
should try to push this back into February to give
I think it
everybody
should
more
have been-
time.
right.
And since the public hasn't been able to get a copy of this, I think that would be prudent right now.
I think
Okay,
just-
but it was work there was some previous work done by, I guess it was Mr. Weir and other administrators, Dr. Bose. That was already there. You put in a lot of time and work. This document's here. This document will go out to the community tomorrow. The copies will be made.
May I?
This is a meeting that we are stuck between the old system of work sessions and what is up later here in the evening, an explanation of the new committee system. This committee can at any time call a meeting for specifically this matter.
Can I ask though, since it is as a work session subject matter right now, tonight as we sit, what is the problem with someone, whether it's John or whether it's Mabel, someone taking this and making copies to the members of the community that are sitting here right now rather than them returning? And we consider the
Wanna call
fact
John?
that while it's been received by the board, it is still subject to future discussion that gives it the atmosphere and opportunity for dialogue that a work session provides as opposed to an action meeting.
We're not,
Because I have
still
no
a
clue.
committee, it's not going to an action meeting, Mrs. Shar. There's 5
Yeah.
pages here that have to be collated for how many people here. I mean, there's
Well,
nothing.
we as a board
This
collectively,
isn't,
though.
this isn't very complicated, there's nothing fast being pulled here. The
I didn't
committee
say that.
finished some work and they just handed some in.
What I'm asking, will we go back to a setting such as this when we as a collective board will be meeting
That would be
to
an
have
action
the
meeting.
dialogue that occurs in work sessions as a board?
Madam President, we had intention of having a public meeting of the
Right.
committee for this reason
Right.
only.
But
Right.
that's not
But
necessarily
this
full
was
board.
on, but.
That's not a committee of the whole.
Ken Weir worked on was on the agenda.
Yeah.
And that was like.
Unfortunately, these things
what's
parallel each other.
Right.
Then because of the holidays and 13 days of work, including Christmas and New
And
Year's, it
this
just
is-
virtually couldn't come to the floor.
Plus, to justify that this is no longer in effect, it had to come to the public floor.
Oh, I know that.
There's
and
nothing
it-
really complicated here at all.
We'll return to a committee of the whole meeting, so that we as a collective
Yes.
body,
We have to,
not
I think we
a.
have to by law, 2 times,
sub-
right?
No,
For-
that's the
reading it.
That's a reading, but it doesn't preclude public discussion at the action
Okay.
meetings. It's never precluded this board, believe me.
Well, I just like
And
to-
secondly, if this committee chooses to hold a public meeting for this purpose only, then I'd encourage all 9 board members to be there.
Yeah, that
Then-
was our intent.
I thought
But I
so.
would like to see a committee of a whole discussion once we've had a chance to digest this and take questions, and those members of the community that are interested in responding to this has something tangible to evaluate and respond
Okay,
to.
but you're talking as if this isn't going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't know what more we can do to make you feel better.
I understood, he said a separate subcommittee meeting. That's not necessarily a
They're going
committee
to
of the whole.
be
The
public
Community Relations and
committees.
Policy Committee will have a public meeting on internet policy and acceptable use.
That's not a committee of the whole meeting.
No, but we still have to
Well,
have
all
a committee
9
of the whole
board
meeting for
members ought to
approval,
make
don't
an
we?
attempt to get there. Can't make them come. Mr. Schilling?
Who will oversee the implementation of this? I mean, who will the technology manager?
No, that's the thing. We finalized the original draft yesterday. We forwarded it to the solicitor, and we brought it tonight because unfortunately the other policy that was developed by the administration was still on the agenda.
And it has to come off the floor. This
I
is the best way to do
understand that,
it.
But I was just wondering who was, was the technology manager. That's a question still has to be answered later. What about privacy? How I know different companies with their networks within the companies have different policies regarding how privacy. How is that dealt with? I didn't really get a chance to read it.
Well, it speaks to it in that, I think if you read
Yeah.
it, we cover that in that draft.
We covered that after talking to 12 Montgomery County school districts that had internet access policies. And we specifically gave it its own title for that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Vince, piggyback. I think, John, I know I, for one, every time internet came up, we kept talking about, policy. We had asked Mr. Weir on many occasions, he was collecting data and collecting information. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think what's in the packet tonight that the audience has is kind of a culmination or the original of what we were asking for. What Mr. Hill and Mr. Sierpinski basically did, and of course I had some input, was basically take what we've gotten from other school districts, from people I've talked to in terms of consultants and so forth, to try to, even make this a little tighter. Okay. And that's what we're looking for. Like Don says, we want to get a policy in place first, so that we eliminate any potential problems.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
All right, thank
that's
you.
all.
Yeah.
All righty. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. Aha.
Sit here.
I should just called you up instead of waiting.
Thanks. H. Bruce Gordon, Montgomery Township. Let me just shake and clear my head from all that. That was quite a go-round. I'm sorry we don't have a copy here. Let me, if I can, just throw a couple comments out, and whatever the next draft of this policy turns out to be based on what we got tonight in the audience. A couple things, and maybe it won't make sense, so I'm just going to throw them out. And if they're already taken care of in your current policy, that's great. There's a comment here in the beginning page that for purposes, the use of the internet for other purposes such as for-profit activity or extensive personal business is not acceptable. One caveat you might want to think about putting on that is allowing for-profit intranet use. In other words, within the district. Discussion we were having in the audience tonight was, wouldn't it be a neat idea if the band could offer for sale items that would help support the band, where that may or may not want to be out there in the public domain. You certainly would want to make it available as an advertising item for those that sign on to the intranet within the North Penn School District itself. Also, you could eventually want to get into alumni items and so on. With regards to the notes here about privacy, there's a comment here: if a user is believed to be in violation of guidelines stated in the policy, system administrator, teacher may need to gain access to private correspondence or files. An attempt will be made to notify the user of such inspections whenever possible. Not to be Gestapo or police state kind of thing here, but if you're going to tell them, they're going to cover up.
Let me tell you, that particular issue was absolutely changed.
Okay, good.
We had to, because I'll tell you why. The 12 contacts that we made in Montgomery County alone, every one of them had the privacy issue opposite of what we had in that policy. Right.
Yeah, I think you'll find corporate policy,
absolutely.
Use of internet says, if you're going to use our system, we retain the right to look at the files if necessary.
The privacy issue is stated in the revised policy as the North Penn School District network is maintained and managed by a system administrator in such a way to ensure its availability and reliability in performing its educational mission. Users have no reasonable expectation of privacy concerning any materials transferred over or stored within the North Penn School District network.
That's great. Yeah, that's more like a corporate kind of statement. With regards to the intellectual freedom paragraph that was in our copy here, there's discussion that North Penn School District does not officially endorse any opinions stated on the network with regards to posting email. I think that seems legally, so to speak, to cover us if someone were to post something defamatory and so on. But you might want to suggest that a mandatory disclaimer on all outgoing emails be put at the bottom. I think a lot of corporations require that. Something like the opinions expressed do not reflect that of the North Penn School District. And just set that up as a base kind of statement that everyone would add to their email.
This was something we talked about yesterday. You're right, it probably is legalese. But again, where Vince and I talked about this yesterday, one of the ways you can control something like this is when you control what computers will have internet access.
Sure, to the point that you can, but
I mean, not
even
totally, but you can pretty
without
much.
looking over someone's shoulder, though, they're still going to send out an email, and if it contains certain wording,
you're right.
You've covered yourself, I think, a solicitor can tell us, by saying, look, we've got a policy, and in writing, we say we do not condone or support anything someone writes on email. But as another kind of tool, you could say, hey, look, they were supposed to put this disclaimer at the bottom of their emails before posting to the internet.
Well, again, Mr. Gordon, this may be something that may come to a court
Yeah, we have
case
to-
someday.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And unfortunately,
I'm sure.
that's when the language will be changed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was it. I sure hope the latest copy of this is made available in a timely fashion. I was sorry to check today at Ms. Steady's office to find that the revamp or the discussion about the change to the finance office document still isn't available for public, and that's been about 30 days now. So I understand it just got back to her office today, according to a receptionist in the office. And I've left my name to get a copy of that, but hopefully. The document, Mrs. Steady made a presentation to the board.
Oh, the additional people.
The additional people and the revamping of the office.
Document. We did the revisions over the holidays, and I guess that just went out yesterday. You probably just received it.
She did. I think her office just got it today.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. This is some, if documents that are going to be made public can, I understand the holidays are a tough time, but more.
Well, that was
more
a
time.
document that had to be revised because
Yes,
of
I
personnel.
understand.
This is different. I've asked Dr. Bose to please provide this to Community Relations to start producing tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Gordon, thank you very much for some of those ideas. Mr. Shapinsky, just coming off of what Mr. Gordon had said, I know that a lot of, I know my bank and I know other business, places of business have random screenings of the contents, that they audit contents on the internet to make sure that members of personnel are not abusing internet, that they reserve the right at any time to go in and see what's on, within the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
And
a
they
lot
do
of local
screening.
banks do that, and also some of the private
Insurance
sector.
companies, I think, do it too.
We know that they review randomly
Right.
email and different things
Right. That's
to
what I
check
mean.
on their policy.
See, the
enforcement.
thing we try to address, and Vince and I talked for about 2 hours about this yesterday, is because there is so much information available on the internet. A lot of it can be very personal and, just, it can really become a mess if some of this stuff starts to just get out and be broadcast out there. That's the thing we're really most concerned about.
I have a question about different times that I've accessed in different web pages on the internet, and you can answer my question, Vince, without knowing, just going through different web pages, I must have hit an inappropriate area or something where I wanted to go, and it said, uh-oh, you got a cookie. What is that? What's a cookie?
A cookie is
that
a
some kind of
command or
warning
data that's
that-
sent from the site you visited to your machine.
So are these different?
It's something coming back to you.
Okay, so these different websites must also have their own policing mechanism or security.
Not really. A lot of the softwares that are developed by us on our side for using have protections to that warn you when a cookie's coming your way or information or data is coming back from that site.
I see.
And that allows you to either accept it or not accept it.
Okay,
That's
so it
that's
wasn't
protection on our
necessarily that I
part.
had
That won't have
something
anything to do
wrong.
with use policy, but that will have something to do with how we go about it to protect our resources and our students.
Okay.
That'll be part of that. That'll be, I don't know if you can consider that more of a
I see.
guideline than a
That'll
policy.
actually be a guideline as opposed to a policy. I would
Yeah.
think.
Mr. Graziano, thank you for waiting for us.
Bob Graziano from Tillmanson. First off, I'm a big fan of the internet. I use it daily. I'm absolutely amazed by the amount of information that's there. And if you haven't been on the internet, you really need to go on. I often get frustrated now if it takes me more than 10 minutes to find what I'm looking for. I'm not going to tell you what I'm looking for. It used to be in business, if you needed contact with a distributor of a product or a manufacturer of a product, you make phone calls, you wait to get mail back, you look at the material, you call back. It takes you weeks, if not months, to do things. Now you can do things literally in minutes, and it's just a fantastic tool. By the same token, there's a lot of garbage there, and I can appreciate the task you have at hand, because it's not easy, there's a lot of trust involved, and you just can't be Gestapo. So that there's a lot of work to be done in this policy. One of the things I see lacking in this one, and maybe you've addressed it, is guidelines towards web pages. I see web pages as a tremendous tool. Mrs. Krieger, you mentioned about self-promoting the district. I cannot wait for the day where the district has its web page, where instead of having to come here and get a piece of paper, I can get it just by getting on the webpage. There's so many things that we can now do with web pages, or we will be able to do with web pages, that will eliminate a lot of paper, a lot of hassles, a lot of coming to the district office to get things, so on and so forth. So I think you need to put some guidelines as to the use of web pages in here, both district, clubs, personal, teachers, whatever. Because the web page, I think, could be a big tool in the district. Also, one other question. Are we not bringing this forward then on January the 15th as first reading?
I don't believe we're gonna, because we're gonna have to, I wanna hold a public meeting of the Community Relations and Policy Committee so we can have further input on this topic, just this topic. And try to develop more with some of the board comments that have already come forward. And we're doing the comparison to the Technical Career Center and what they're using, and we're lucky that our new original draft incorporated a lot of that for us. So, but we still need a lot of input, because I'll tell you what, the biggest problem that Don and Pat and I came up with is that we're out there to protect our students and our children, and virtually we can't guess about everything.
No, you can't. In fact,
and all we can do is hope that they can. And this goes by different grade, and this is a lot broader than what you just asked. But you know, we had discussed how to do that, and the best way we saw in the lower grades would be to basically have pre-sites or pre-assessed sites by our teachers that say these are where you're going to go to do what you have to do, and that'll protect us in some way. As our students, you know, get older, they have more responsibility, they have more sense, and hopefully, you know, they can. Protect themselves. Yeah, more accountability. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a hard situation, because, quite frankly, we can't guess what's going to happen.
Bob, I have been gathering information since last March the 12th, and we got our first technology meeting. And I must have a stack of stuff this high at home, magazines, articles, trying to gather everything I can in terms of, you know, some of the pitfalls of technology. So Vince is right. We're probably not going to be 100%, but boy, we're going to do the best we can to make it.
And there's uses of the internet that we haven't even thought of yet.
Sure.
And you know, somehow it's got to be an evolving document or something that
we have that now. As the last thing in this document is that this will be annually reviewed, just because of the growing information.
Okay, one more question, Vince, if I could. Can you email me a copy of your?
Sure.
Thank you.
Email me a copy.
Yes. Yes, I can.
That's cute, Bob.
On the house.
Anybody else, please?
Send it to my email.
Yeah, let's make sure we can screen that. Anybody? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and this will be scheduled for its own committee meeting by this very fine, hard-working committee. This is a very good piece of first-time homework from new board member Mr. Shapinsky, and Mr. Hill and Mr. Mosey. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
We're moving on the agenda now to talk about administrative salaries.
Yes, and then we have the committee system and committee assignments.
And we're going to make an announcement about committee system and committee assignments. I'll begin by thoughtfully and reflectively asking the board to consider and ponder what I want to bring to its attention. Probably by the turn of the century, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and other leading media, as well as the electronic media, will begin to do major stories on the growing shortage of school administrators in our country. Because there is a growing shortage of school administrators. Today I received, by sheer coincidence, a letter from a superintendent friend who's in suburban St. Louis, on the west side of St. Louis, sending me a notice pleading for suggestions of people who would apply for a middle school principalship in Ladue, Missouri. First time that's ever happened to me. Now, I receive a lot of publications about that contain ads for school administrator positions, but it's the first time I've ever received a direct mail from another individual saying, I need help. So I called Chuck McKenna, and I said, this is strange. Tell me about why you're doing this. He said, well, we recently posted a job for a middle school principal, and we had so few applicants we had to start all over again. So I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going personally to superintendents around the country I know, asking them to recommend people. What I'm trying to say is this is a fact. It's happening. In September, I attended a meeting of superintendents from 10 states. One of the main topics was, what is your current experience with looking for school administrators? And the answer was essentially the same. There's a shrinking supply and the quality is down. Why is that happening? Well, the good news is teacher salaries are considerably better than they used to be years ago. And the natural inclination to get into school administration, at least to make more money, if not to have greater influence on education, has changed drastically. And so that natural incentive that propelled me and a lot of people like me in my generation to get a master's degree and major in school administration as soon as you could, which was 4 years after I started teaching, is not the same anymore. So some of the natural incentive is gone, which is causing in an economic world, because it's an economic issue, and we ought to look at it as if it's an economic issue, the way people do in the business world. The supply of candidates is shrinking as the demand goes up. And so many school administrators, particularly in large metropolitan areas, look around to see if they can do better in the same job by moving laterally across school district boundaries to a school district nearby or within reasonable driving distance without giving up a residence, relocating a family, and going through all that's required when somebody changes jobs and has to change residence as a consequence of changing jobs. So these are economic market forces at work. We need to recognize them and anticipate what our response is going to be so we don't face a rapid drain of the talent we already have. I also think we need to look at what our marketplace is, and we might begin by looking at as small an area as Montgomery County, where there are over 20 school districts, and look at the reports that we all have access to that show what the average salaries are in job-alike positions, principal, director, supervisor, etc., within our own county, and find that our average salary is below the county average for most of the administrative positions about which we're talking. Now, I know the board is very interested in developing the means to reward people whose work, both quality and quantity, is good, so as to encourage more of the same good work. I believe our administrators recognize that and are willing to work cooperatively in a renewed effort to develop something by the end of this school year, perhaps sooner, that could be presented to the board as a serious consideration for adoption. And I will double my efforts, and I know there are people with whom I've already talked who are school administrators in North Penn and represent others who say they're willing to do that and to do that post haste as well. The board has budgeted a certain amount of money for administrators' salaries for this school year to become effective in this month. It was based on an assumption that we could, school district representatives and representatives of school administrators jointly, develop a plan to adjust salaries based on merit or performance. Well, we acknowledge that did not occur. It's not a matter of whose fault it was. That's not important, because neither party had the opportunity or took the opportunity to present something to the other that would represent at least a first look at a first draft. I think we've recognized our mutual mistake and can make an adjustment to correct that and produce something by the end of the school year. And if that's the case, I would respectfully request the board consider applying those funds now budgeted to school administrators, then perhaps at the end of the year, retroactive to January 1, as a recognition that it does have and would accept and receive a plan to adjust salaries based on the quantity and the quality of work in the future, but make an adjustment at the end of this school year that reflects the work that was done in the school year. And so I know this is a troublesome topic for the board. I know that among you there are a variety of opinions. What I'm suggesting as the superintendent of schools, from my perspective, this is an urgent matter. That we need school administrators at least to manage the daily routine operation of a large school district, and to do that in an organized and peaceful manner, to keep order and provide direction. And then beyond that, we need school administrators to play a crucial role in all the planning and the goal development and the results orientation that we think represent the best interests of the students that we all serve. And so without any further rambling on my part, I wanted this opportunity, as many of you know from previous discussions, to present a case not necessarily for any course of action, but at least for a course of action that can be mutually determined and considered beneficial to the long-term interest of the North Penn School District. So I ask the board to thoughtfully consider what I've said, take an opportunity to ask me questions, give me a call, sit down with me and talk about it, as well as look for the opportunity that you'll have yourself in the near future to react to the topic and to consider what the proper course of action might be. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Bose, I think what I liked hearing most of all was a willingness for a renewed effort to put together a model, performance-based pay model, at least reconvene meetings between the NPAA and members of the board that have been assigned to that committee. Folks in the audience and members of the board have been given committee assignments. They have been tightened up under the area of personnel. NPEA talks specifically in this area of performance-based pay will be conducted later this January, and Mr. Shapinsky and I will handle that responsibility. With the NPAA, which is most critical what we're talking about tonight, for the area of performance-based pay and salary discussions only, Mr. Hill and Mrs. Scherr would be handling that responsibility. All other matters normally, generally understood to be discussed under meet and discuss practices are Hill, Mosey, and Krieger. And left off of the prior list was this, salary discussions and all other matters related to employment for support services. There's a mistake. That's Alan. Mr. Allen has the committee. Alan, O'Donnell, and Schoen. So if I see that the members of the NPAA are here, the officers are here tonight, obviously Mr. Hill and Mrs. Scherr are here tonight, any opportunity that you get this evening to arrange your next meeting would be greatly appreciated by the board, and I would think for yourselves. Those talks have to begin. There is money held in the budget. That money has not been spent, and I understand from the vote that was taken last month that that money won't be spent without a performance-based pay model that can be enacted the following year. Those monies are there and willing, I believe the board is willing to release those at the end of this year upon completion of that task. Comments to the left?
I stated, I
Last
think it's
meeting.
right. I think we have to have more dialogue.
Ms. Krieger?
What are you asking for? I'm sorry, I was.
No, I'm not asking for anything. I heard talking over there, so
I'm sorry, I apologize. I guess I'm just a little confused on the difference between the NPEA, the NPAA, and the meet and discuss. What is the meet? Is the meet and discuss committee
It was administration.
going to be meeting with?
The NPAA at any time could ask to meet with members, representation from the board on any matter they choose. It could be benefits, it could be working conditions, it could be anything.
Okay, but specific
This
to
specific,
performance-based pay.
correct, and
and
salary discussions, the situation we
That's
find ourselves in now.
I see.
Mr. Hill, personnel, Mrs. Scherr from finance, I felt made the best team. Mrs.
Right.
Scher already began some preliminary discussions in our last meeting with Mr. Feely. I picked up, or thought I picked up a rapport there, and thought that should continue.
So does meet and discuss also apply to NPEA, if they should want to meet with?
NPEA, there was a memorandum of understanding in the last contract that membership from this board, 2 members, would be meeting with membership from the NPEA to work on the same model, same assignment, and produce by June of '99 a report to the community.
I think, to answer your question directly, by law,
I thought that was understood.
we have to have a meet and discuss committee to meet with the administrators.
Okay, so
That's
this
what
is
that
specific
meet and
to
discuss, that's
administrators
strictly,
not-
only,
not-
that's
not
correct.
the-
That's
okay.
correct.
I just wanted to make
Mr.
sure.
Allen,
What?
anything?
Oh, you woke him up.
Sorry. Around, gentlemen.
No.
Gentlemen.
Dr. Bose, do you want input from individual board members on the direction of this performance-based pay, or should we direct that to our committee members who represent the board?
Either way, Mr. Schmidt.
How do you want it
I
done?
would certainly.
Well, I think it should go to both. We're gonna work together, and speaking to what Madam President brought up, is that I'm anxious. Obviously, I was trying to bring this to a head last meeting, and I'm anxious to get this started, to go where we wanted to go when we start these discussions before. And as soon as I have an input from Dr. Bose relative to where we've had some discussions about this today already, but when he has something concrete that we can talk about, then I want to start having a meeting with the AA regarding this plan. And that should be coming up, I would hope, before the end of the month.
I know that there are other administrators that'll go unnamed tonight that are researching what other people are doing in other areas of the country in regards to performance-based pay. So they'll be researching for other models. Maybe it's something that'll work for us, maybe it's something we need to tailor design, whatever it takes. The research being done by other administrators, appreciate it.
Mrs. Mengele, I'd like to also bring to Dr. Bose's attention that last week in the ILS question that we got, there was a performance-based program that was instituted at the University of Iowa by a professor there. It's being instituted and being recommended as a possible program for other school districts to implement in relationship to performance-based pay. And I want to bring that up. Maybe you could
Thank you.
find that. And all it said was to call them for a copy of it. And so it's another resource that you may find helpful in development of that plan.
Okay, Ms. Scher.
Okay, having been newly assigned to this and switched from the NPEA committee, where I had major concerns at the time we negotiated this contract, that merit pay committee would become a reality, not an abstract promise to discuss. I'd like to know, under that new committee assignment and the new committee structure, is it the anticipation that general discussions of philosophy or policy of either of these two groups, NPEA, NPAA, will also be public meetings, or will they remain administrative personnel closed door?
Solicitor, would you answer that question, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
The meetings that you refer to, which would be NPEA and the other meetings which you refer to, the NPAA, would either be in the nature of labor negotiations or employee relations, as the case may be. To the extent that what you're doing is in either of those areas, you are permitted by law to have an executive session with respect to them, and they can be discussed in private, just the same as you would do whether you were doing it in an executive session with the entire board or an executive session with any committee.
Even though there's no distinction between what may be involved in specific personnel issues such as the meet and discuss versus what we may be discussing in more general terms regarding what the average increase or how it will be implemented, even though there's no individuals involved.
Well,
We have no distinction there to be concerned with.
There certainly are individuals involved. When you talk about an increase in salary across a classification, you may not mention specific names, but you are certainly discussing the salary of specific individuals. That certainly come under the executive session allowance.
Well, I would certainly appreciate some direction and consensus of where we as a board are in general, so we know which path to go down. I do know the last discussion that we held, I left with 2 suggestions which required follow-up of additional information to be developed and passed to us as a board. As a member of that committee, I'm still looking for that information. One was I would like to ascertain exactly how many members of the NPAA have actually been affected by a salary freeze when you take into consideration all those vacancies that we've heard so much about resulted in a new employee being placed as an NPAA member with a pay raise that was not affected by a budget strike on the 96-97 personnel. And we can name numerous members that have shifted positions and have in fact received an increase. And we can name quite a few just from recent board meetings and board action votes. So I'd like to see just how much of our existing MPAA membership have actually been left with 96-97 pay level salaries.
Mr. Steady, can that be pulled from payroll records? Thank you.
And I would like to also be able to begin committee work with the 9 separate salary grade levels that administrative regulations indicate should exist in this district, but have been unavailable, be developed so that we can follow through with administrative regs. It's a little hard to sit here and debate whether or not we are paying our employees on an appropriate scale according to policy and regulations when the very baseline doesn't exist.
Let me speak.
And I want, Don, please, I know that there were category classifications for all of our administrative positions at one time. That is, by the very nature of the introduction of the reg, supposed to be what we are supposed to be, is supposed to be what we use to begin to evaluate the internal parity of our employees. Until that exists, I don't know how you can make claims that we're out of sync, or any of us can argue with you that we're not, when we haven't established a internal organizational chart that goes beneath the cabinet level. And we do not have established the parity or the internal structure for whether an elementary principal is above, below, or equal to
You're talking about the
another
salary,
building.
the administrative salary schedule that we've been asking for since last February.
We received the regulation, it's 2510. It clearly states here that the North Penn School District will use a salary schedule is designed with 9 separate salary grade levels. It provides a mechanism for relating the pay of each administrative position to both the marketplace and to each other.
Right.
This is an active, supposedly effective policy.
Right.
And I'm asking that if you want to send me on this mission, at least let us begin with something something to hold on to and to begin us in a process. And I'm only asking for something that should be existing at this time and place. And if we're going to say it does not, I think it's long overdue that we get the job done and we have something to hang our hat on.
Do you want to be on this committee?
Appreciate that.
Do you want to be on the MPAA's committee
Well,
for
Madam
the
President-
performance-based pay salary discussions? Do you want to be on it?
Well, as you know, I had a personal interest in
It's
the
just yes or no, do you wanna
MPEA
be on it or
committee
not?
because I had concerns at the time that we were dealing with the contract, and I had opinions which were quelled with the
Mrs. Sure. Do you
Pledge
want
of
to be
that.
on this committee or not? I can
I would
assign maybe
like-
someone else from finance if you don't
I
want
would
to do
like to
this.
have some opinions from the board. If you'd like to send me there, don't give me an empty gun.
I would recommend you put somebody else on.
And Don himself has said he didn't want to follow
Well,
through.
look, let me speak to a couple of the issues. Let me speak to a couple of
You made the
issues.
same recommendation about me, and that same recommendation was made because I've been very steadfast in requesting the same stuff from the NPAA since we first began this last February. For some reason, Don, it's not forthcoming. I'm tired of asking for it. I'm not gonna ask for it again. The NPAA is fully aware of what it is the previous committee asked for. I didn't think that that was gonna change, but maybe perhaps the agenda has changed now. And if that is, then maybe you should indicate that to the board. But it's not gonna change the way I feel on what the board determined to do in the last budget process, and that was to delay a 1% increase until January, when at that time, a merit-based performance process would be put in place that they would develop. Now, it hasn't come forward, Don.
Well, you're going on about things that's already been discussed 5,000 times. Yes, we've said it tonight.
We discussed 5,000 times, but we're still waiting for the stuff.
Would you listen to what was said? What was said tonight was clearly stated that they're not going to get the 1% increase until a merit pay or performance pay plan is put in place.
That's not what Dr. Bo said.
He said that exactly is what he said.
Dr. Bo said that he would deliver it by the end of the year, but he still wants us to consider.
At the end of the year,
At the end of the year, when this plan is in place.
Going retroactive back to last July.
No, I heard January.
No, January.
Well, we still have to come back to January and retroactive pay?
It's already in the budget.
I
Once
don't
we
care
get,
if the money's there. Just because the money's there doesn't mean it has to be spent. Now, there was a definitive goal and objective that was established by the previous.
This is a-
I
let me-
understand. If that's changed and somebody flew.
All right, you may-
Mrs. Sheeran, because
you may-
maybe she doesn't want to serve on
if that's the
that.
position you want to take on this particular thing, keep the position, that's fine. But that's not what we're trying to do in this committee. What we're trying to do in this committee is develop this performance-based plan. That is the primary purpose that we're trying to get done now, as of this committee, as of this year. We're trying to develop with the administrators a performance merit-based plan. As Dr. Bose indicated, we want to have that done as quickly as possible, but no later than the end of this calendar year, or this fiscal year. That is the primary purpose of this meeting with the NPAA. That's the primary purpose.
No, that's been the primary intent of the board since.
Well, you let me
last
finish.
year.
Well, then fine. That's what we said we're going to do.
The board hasn't released any funds based on that priority.
All right, that's number one. We also, as related to as the information has already been given to you, but it's going to be re-looked at and redone, is that we have looked at the salaries of the surrounding school districts, and we have developed some recommended salary schedules, salary bands for the different jobs. I'm not saying those are what they're going to be, but we've started work in that area. But the first thing we're going to do is get the merit-based plan in place. Then we'll talk about the salaries, and then we can come back and vote on whether you want to give them the 1% back from January or not. And you can vote yes or no on that.
Don, I would still like to know what we've been basing the salary schedules of the administrative employees in the past 4 years, if nobody can find a salary schedule.
What does it make
anywhere in
it,
this
I
building.
understand what you're asking for, but let's start from a clean slate and a clean point. We know what their salaries are today, right? You know what everybody's salary is today on these jobs.
I know the salaries of the administrators that I was given a list to.
All the administrator
list up here.
salaries are available, right?
Okay?
You know what all the administrator salaries
But
are.
that doesn't tell me anything. It gives me their salary.
Would you let me
Don.
finish? Will you give me the
Doesn't
fact?
Give me a range of salary schedule the same way that
No, no,
the
would you-
NPEA has theirs.
You're not listening to what I say. You got your own agenda.
No,
I
you're
said,
not listening.
you have, there's a list of salaries out for the administrators. We know today what they are.
No, that's not a salary schedule, Don.
I didn't say it was a
That's
salary. Did I say salary schedule?
Okay, folks, you two are not coming to a conclusion that's agreeable between the two of you.
Because he doesn't
We need
understand.
committee work in this area. We know that not only are there salary schedule, the salary schedule for the administrator is not available, or so it's claimed not to be available.
And that's ridiculous. 'cause
Then
we have a policy
unfortunately,
that says
because there are.
We're supposed to have one.
But there's other pieces that broke down long before any of us were here. Comp ratio broke
Right.
down years ago to arbitrary earnings that were given to folks by recommendations by previous boards and previous administrators. That is neither Dr. Bose's fault. This board Dr. Miller inherited many of these errors. They fell apart long ago. This board now has an opportunity to not only, for the first time in history, implement performance-based pay in cooperation with the NPAA, but we can finally clean up salary schedules that were handled arbitrarily in the past. The only reason the NPEA has a salary schedule is a part of their contract. That is the only reason. These folks are not governed under an existing contract like the NPEA. There may have to be work done here from the ground floor in rectifying administrative pay that has been fouled over many, many years. It's another cleanup job for this board. We've been here before. Different areas of this district, the finances, that's why we're doing an audit. Unfortunately, this board has to clean up another area in the district.
I think, let me interrupt, Teresa, if I can. I think where the problem here is that we have been asking for the 9 salary schedules, okay?
Okay.
Let's address that.
Yeah, and I think,
Dr. Miller and I told you, we've never seen it.
I agree. I'm not saying
If
you
anybody
haven't.
has it, please come.
I'm saying the first sentence in the regulation. I have talked, Teresa, let me finish. I have talked I haven't talked to Mr. Hill, I've talked with Mr. Shapinsky about this. I think that Regulation 2510, it's 4 or 5 years old. I think we have to address that as a policy committee. That has to, the language is just confusing. It's just too much. It can be streamlined. Secondly, I think where the problem is that Mrs. Krieger's right. We have been asking for the salary schedules. They don't exist. What she is saying, I think, is if we don't have one, then how are we determining salaries? We throwing a dart against the wall, or we just bring someone in and we like them better than somebody else, and we start them at 80,000, and somebody else is making 72? I think that's what her question is. And I think what Mr. Hill is saying, and he's trying to tell her, you know, he asked for those bands, which we got a copy of. They're not cast in stone, but perhaps it's a starting point. And I agree with you.
It has to be redesigned.
We're going to have to, in conjunction with cleaning up the policy, we're going to have to clean up and establish our own 9 salary levels, I guess.
And we want to create a salary schedule and a policy suitable for now into the next, into 2000 and beyond, instead of going backwards and going from there. We're only going to recreate past mistakes. I think we need to have to start over.
I don't see the development of an administrative salary schedule to be that duty of the boards or any board committee. That is strictly, in my opinion,
perhaps you're right.
the responsibility of the association that wants those increases. And number 2, the superintendent, who has gone above and beyond pitching for those increases.
Okay, one moment, folks. Young man, how much time do we have?
About 3 minutes.
Let me make one.
Okay, quickly,
Real quick
come
comment.
back.
Real quick comment. I like what Pat just said. I think we're on the same wavelength. I believe I am. With Pat. Pat is also on policy. I would, and I hear reluctance from Mrs. Scheer regarding this assignment. It would be my recommendation, since he has worked with me before on this. He is on policy. Policy has to be changed in conjunction with it. I would recommend that he be put onto that committee with me in place of Mrs. Scheer to make her happier. And I think Pat and I could probably work this out better.
Okay, well, committee assignments are the board president's prerogative. It's probably the only prerogative we get. If Mr. Scheer doesn't want to be on that, I'd appreciate if she'd tell me that shortly, and I will not make a change unless she doesn't wish to serve.
I agree with that, Madam President.
Thank you, young man. 3 minutes, we'll come back.
Yeah, it was your turn to yell at me again, Don.
Okay, now for your watching enjoyment, Mr. Hill and Mrs. Krieger are going to kiss on the lips and make up.
For your watching enjoyment.
Anything you two lovebirds want to say to each other now that you're all gone?
Happy New Year, Don.
Okay.
I missed that one.
I did, and it was over in this corner. Catch everything.
No wonder you're so
Yeah.
Okay,
Madam
is
President?
there any, just one last wrap up, is there anything possibly left on administrative salaries that hasn't been said a million times? Anything?
Clarification. Mr. Mosey made some comments, which is basically what my point that was being made regarding the salary scale. I do not believe it's necessarily with the NPAA Association itself as a group. It is an administrative responsibility, be it Dr. Bose, Dr. Miller, whoever he so chooses is best to follow through and actually carry forward the administrative regulations that we have on our books. I feel the same way regarding those requests that were left on the table at our last MPAA meeting regarding the staff that is actually still in place and actually receiving the 96, 97 pay salaries that they were awarded last year, as opposed to having been shifted or assigned recent salaries because of change in position. And while Mr. Hill may agree with Mr. Mosey, essentially I think we were saying the same things, perhaps we said it in two different ways. And I'd just like to have that clarified. That is where I was laying that. When I said we, I meant we as a district, not necessarily we as board members, to create that internal organizational chart for our mid-level and building level employees.
Okay, Dr. Bush?
I'd like to address that partially, the issue that you identified, Mrs. Shear. I believe when you were referring to the regs that we all would agree are outdated, or at least unacceptable to the board at this time. You were reading them from what I had sent you on the 23rd of December. And that has a list of those salaries that you're requesting attached to it. Now, it may not be complete, and I will send you a more complete list if it's not complete. And I will clearly identify those administrators on that list whose salaries have not been adjusted since June of '96. I will identify those, and I will send that out Friday to all of you again. And I'll also say one other thing with your indulgence. And that is, that document does mention the list or a salary guide, as you mentioned, because you're reading from it. And I tell you again, I have never seen it. I have asked Dr. Miller, she searched the file, she has never seen it either. If it's out there, I'd like to see it because it's either disappeared or it never existed, or it certainly obviously is no longer applicable because no one has seen it for the past 3 years.
Dr. Bose, I'm not going to argue with whether one exists or not until I actually stumble across one. Fact is, we're never going to have one until an administrator responds to the board's request to create one, to replace the document that no one can no longer find. And that is what my request is. It is a matter of taking the positions as they exist, an elementary level principal, and deciding whether that is a salary, a Schedule 8 or 7 position, deciding whether or not a ESC supervisor of curriculum is either a salary 7 equal to an elementary level principal, or are they a level 6, or are they a level 8 or 9. That it's a matter of taking those particular categories, not individual employees, but the categories, the job categories, and assigning them and organizing them into some order. We have seen us move into a very chaotic state in our salary ranges as we look at these administrative salaries. We have been in positions, we as a board, to where we've had to assign $6,000, $7,000 increases to react to previous board decisions that created an unexplainable disparity between one employee and another. And I believe that the cause of this situation is the fact that we have not established an objective criteria, even in the most broadest sense, of the job positions and how they should be viewed and how they should be assigned as we look at salary bands for new applicants for jobs, or movement from one job position to another through an internal candidate. And I think that if we're really going to address the problem, which is certainly, needs to come ahead of even a performance-based system, we've got a major problem at the very beginning of our salary assignment process that needs to be corrected by establishing what the parity should be within the various internal positions that we have here in the district. And I think disparity and inequities within your organization itself is far more detrimental to the morale of your employees than moving forward to talk about the disparities of salaries in other school districts within the county.
Mr. Chair, we can propose a salary schedule like the one that you allude to with 8 points, 10 points, 6 points, whatever. Doesn't change the fundamental problem. Mr. Hill addressed it earlier when he said they're already in front of you work that he's proposed that establish salary bands rather than a schedule. Essentially, that's simply a range of high to low that people are paid. You're going to eventually have to make that decision. 9 of you, your policy makers, your decision makers that deal with those things. And so if you want a schedule as opposed to bands, you can certainly produce a schedule, because there's not any around that reg that you have read from represents. On the other hand, most of you may not like the idea of a salary schedule, because once you schedule it, you're going to have to move people to it. And then you're going to say, that's too much, too far, too soon.
That's right.
So you might start with the status quo and consider adjusting salary based upon what you call merit. I call it quantity and quality of work, same thing. But that's yet to be determined as well. What we need to do is, as somebody here said it, we may have to start from ground zero and reinvent the whole critter.
Well, what I'm saying is, you could give us what you believe as your administrative recommendation, the order of the positions, how they should fall on an organizational chart, and from there, we as a committee can work towards those salary bands that would be most responsible and appropriate for the system. Because I know that as I looked, Mr. Hill did present some salary band recommendations. One particular area had a $10,000 spread between the high and the low that would have ended up with it falling into what I think would end up being a higher position. They could actually max out above. So we need to have the order. And that's all I'm asking. I'm not saying to take on the dollars. We can look at what we have already existing as our highs and lows within those positions. But if we could get a sub-level organizational chart, I believe it's much needed.
Okay.
I think we would all agree that ought to emerge from the dialogue that we'll have with representatives of the Administrators Association and school board members participating together and thinking through what might be acceptable and rational from the perspective of both parties. And I am dedicated to seeing that that's completed before the end of the school year.
Good.
I just have a quick question for the solicitor, if he can, if not tonight. The administrative regulation, which we were given by Dr. Bozen, I'm sorry if you don't have a copy of this, Mr. Bartle, where it says that a salary structure is designed with 9 separate salary grade levels. If, in fact, there is no such animal in this district, is there some need to revise this administrative regulation?
Sure.
Oh, sure, I would always
do that.
suggest
That's all
that
part
your
of it.
regulation and policy were designed and matched what you were actually doing in the district, and whatever you were doing in the district obviously should conform to the policy and regulation. Definitely.
Pat already said that should come under this committee. I saw Mr. Shapinsky writing it down.
I spoke to Mr. Shapinsky during the break about we're going to have to address, because it hasn't been upgraded since November of '93. And I think that that has to be done. Also, I just wanted, not to belabor the point, I just wanted to point out the last sheet we got, it's dated November 20th, '97, I guess it was before the last meeting. Mrs. Miller was kind enough, and I think this was at Don's request, to put together these various bands that you talked about and so forth, and people's names, where they were salaried. I wanted to point out, you listed the various positions, the maximum, the minimum, and the average. And I took the time to sit down and take a calculator to it. No, we may not be at the maximum, but in every case, every one of our administrative positions are at least $10,000 above what the minimum is. One case, the minimum in the state, or the county, I guess, is $37,000. We have an individual in that position who's making $69,000, which is $32,000 above the minimum. I got to tell you, I wished I could make $32,000 above the minimum salary in my field. That's not bad money where I come from. But not to create any animosity, it's just something that I did. And I think a decision has to be made too, not strictly on salary, but we're going to need the help and the cooperation of the NPAA. And I think dedication comes into position too. Do you like the job you have? Do you like what you're doing, the school district you're working for? If it's going to be strictly a matter of money, then this whole exercise may be an exercise of futility. And at that point, I have nothing more to say.
Okay, members of the audience, it's your turn. Mrs. Abrams.
Linda Abram, Upper Gwinnett. How many neighboring districts have merit-based policies in place for their administrators?
Norristown put a merit base in just recently, and that's part of the research.
Okay. Do we know how long it took them to work with their administrators to reach the point when they instituted their plan?
No, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Do we know nationally how many folks have merit-based policies in place for administrators?
No, I don't have that answer sitting
Excuse
here,
me?
no.
The number of school districts who are going to merit-based pay is climbing.
I understand
every
that.
year.
And quite frankly,
it's an accountability issue that communities are requesting of their school districts every single year.
I don't have any problem with that. My point, though, and I have several points, and I don't know whether I'll be able to articulate them well. The animosity and antagonism that is felt in this room is apparent. It may be an internal thing. I'm sure it's a complex matter. We have lost many administrators. Dr. Bose has pointed out that there is a shortage of administrators. I have to tell you that being in two buildings, my children are in two different buildings, and in talking with parents in our community, from my perspective, people are pleased with the North Penn School District because our buildings are running well. That is not to discount your work here. Mr. Sherpinski, what you did with the internet policy is a wonderful job. I could go on with many compliments. But I have to tell you that the reason our buildings are running well is our people are here and they're committed not for the money. And that angers me when people say, if it's simply for the money, there's the door. Bull! They're here because they love North Penn and they want to make it work. And we have to work together, cooperatively, and not antagonistically. These are people who are helping our staff and our children know that there is a sense of normalcy around us and that things are moving forward. When there have been a lot of things unraveling around us lately, this has been a one constant thing that we have all felt. I get very disturbed when I hear such antagonism. I heard a comment about, I don't have a gun to work on this committee. I'm sorry, I have to tell you, President Mengel, that as a parent makes me step back and wonder who is working here on our children's behalf to keep these administrators. We're talking about 10,000 or 32,000 above the low figure. I don't remember articulately what was said earlier. But I have to tell you, we have to look at a complex number of things when we're talking about salaries, and you know that, and I know that you will do that. I will leave by just saying, my understanding was that this was a $12,000 figure. Is that not correct, that there was $12,000 spoken of in terms of administrators with this increase?
The 1% of actual real dollars, I
Okay.
believe, is, or thereabouts.
Okay. I missed the meetings in December, and I know that there was some allocation for funds for the finance department, a much-needed area, I'm sure. With all due respect to their needs, this is a need that we also have. and that is to say to our administrators, you deserve this. Merit pay aside, I know they need to be working on this. I trust that they recognize the need to be working on this and that our administration recognizes this need. But I have to tell you that this seems like it's a slap in the face, and I resent the fact that it's coming across in that way, and I think we better do a good job about making it appear like we respect our administrators, because you're going to see them running to the door, not because of money, but because they don't get the respect they deserve.
That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.
H. Bruce Gordon, Montgomery Township. I'm just going to say ditto to that. The administrators are running our schools. If the board, as some of the feeling is from being in the schools, that the board is, and we've talked about this a number of times from the parent perspective and from the community perspective, is that there's too much micromanagement going on. I would hope that the administrators, through not necessarily salary, but just other actions going on here, budget issues, how they spend their money, what they want to do with computers. There was talk at the last monthly meeting about whether or not we can accept home and school money that was going to buy computers for them. If we have guidelines for those administrators to work with, let them do what they can for our schools where we don't have general policies in place yet, where we haven't yet been able to bring equity across all the schools where we need to, in particular for the technology, but let them make some decisions at their own level where they can affect what they're doing for the students. And a 1% increase, I don't know what people spend on holiday gifts here, but by the time the government gets out of their pocket too, 1% is not much. And you're talking $12,000. Administrators as a whole, I was just looking at the budget numbers from this year's budget book. In the principals section alone, we're talking $4,300 across 17 buildings for principals. $4,300, that's coming down to, what, $500-600 a building. You really are slapping them in the face by not allowing that to go forward, with the assumption, and I think it's a fair assumption, that good faith efforts will go forward to do merit-based pay. And I think we need that. Let me just shift gears here. With regards to the idea of opening committees up for public meetings, is there any thought yet with regards to being able to make those meeting dates available via the ESC voicemail system that community can call in and find out what meetings are offered when?
Mr. Gordon, that's coming up next under administrative salaries.
Oh,
It's
okay.
next on the agenda, what we can do, what we should do, what's best. Matter of fact, I have 2 committee meetings to announce this evening as soon as we get through the new committee system.
I'll let you
There
get
are
to that.
2, one for the technology and one for community relations and policy on the internet. So those committees were able to pull some dates so that they can be announced tonight, and then they have to be advertised.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Darcy.
Marla Darcy, Upper Gwinnett. I just hope that we'll all think for a minute about what our school district stands for, and that's that we're a place of education. And I think that we can all agree that one of the fundamentals of education is learning how to negotiate, how to listen to one another, how to work with each other. But more importantly than that even is the fact that we as parents and you as the board members and the administrators are role models for how we are teaching our children to act and how we are teaching our children to get along. So we have to set our own priorities first, learn how to listen to each other, set examples of how human beings behave to one another, and teach our children what's important. And I really hope that the talk about ground zero and the talk about starting on a clean slate, that's really important, because if you've been entrenched in your position, think about it and back down and be willing to meet head on and really listen to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, please? Yes, Ms. Solkowski.
She's back.
Junior Olkowski, Township Township. I'm going to disagree with the other members of the Alliance who spoke. For 3 and 4 years, I've been waiting for this board who came in calling themselves conservative to put some teeth into those words, and I think you're finally doing it. Several years ago, there was a study, I believe it was from the PEL, Pennsylvania Economy League, that our teachers were paid 17% higher than similar jobs in industry. I have to wonder if that 17% also includes our administrators. What many people forget is that many of our administrators, possibly the majority, are in the 80 and 90,000 range and even above. And there aren't too many people in industry making those kinds of salaries with the benefits North Penn has. I've heard that North Penn's benefits are better than those at Merck, and Merck is considered one of the top 100 companies in the whole country. I don't know too many companies out there who start administrators, or executives, I should say, in the business world with a month's vacation, and that's what North Penn does. Our benefits are just unbelievable, and those have to be figured into these salaries. And anybody who's an otherwise happy employee who's going to leave because they didn't get a 1% raise is a spoiled brat. I think the reason we're losing administrators in some cases is simply people who, as the case of Mrs. Burke Stevenson, who went up to become superintendent of the New Hope District, where she had an opportunity to advance certainly to a higher position and took it. We have a number of administrators who reached that point, and there's only so many jobs at the top in any district. I think in some cases, perhaps we do have some problems in our administration, but I don't think they're based on salary. I think it's personality problems and other faults that lie with the administration. And I think for too many years, the emphasis has been, oddly enough, on keeping administrators happy and teachers happy, and not too much attention has been paid to the students and the job of education. And I think we have to look at merit increases and stay firm and give increases only when they're warranted by merit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Olkowski. And the study that you quoted was the Hayes study in '93, prior to the contract negotiations with the union. Anybody else, please?
My name is Jen McGeigert. I'm the principal of the Culp School, and I'm also the president of the North Penn Administrators Association. I would like to say that the North Penn Administrators Association is quite willing to work with the administration in terms of developing a merit pay plan. We are not dragging our feet. We are not against any such thing. We do not have these documents that you keep asking for. We have said this repeatedly. We cannot produce things that we do not have. Secondly, for your information, we have met with Dr. Bose several times before the new year to talk about merit pay. Not merit pay, but to talk about merit pay proposals and how to do that. We are working toward that endeavor. And I would want to continue to do that, and I have support of my membership to do that. Speaking for myself, and I want to make this crystal clear that I'm speaking for me, not for the North Penn administrators. I perceive not getting a 1% raise, first of all, I perceive a 1% raise as practically an insult. Number two, I perceive not getting a 1% raise a big slap in the face. I perceive that the administrators are respected by their parents in their schools. We do not perceive that kind of reaction from the community at large. And sometimes we don't perceive it from this school board. And it is very disappointing. It is very disheartening. I regret that I have to say this in a public place, but I am at a point where I cannot keep quiet any longer. I am that upset.
Thank you, Mrs. Geiger.
I guess it's my turn. I was trying not to come up here, but when issues like this arise, I can't contain myself. First of all, I'd like to begin by commending Mrs. Geiger. I can only imagine how difficult that was for her to come up here tonight and say the kinds of things that she felt compelled to say. I'm sorry for her and for other members of the school district, not just the administrative level, our are all of our staff members, and that goes down to our support staff who are feeling demeaned right now. The overall tone in this school district is shameful, and it's very sad. And I know I've gotten up here before and asked the same kind of message, but I think we've got to band together. And I've heard some things tonight that says that is going to begin happening. But we need to, as somebody already said, go back to zero, all enter this in an objective manner, and try to attain a feeling of camaraderie as a group. The respect and the lack of dignity, the lack of respect and the lack of dignity that the administrators and some of the other members who are employed by our school district, it just shouldn't be happening. It's sad. And as Mrs. Geiger stated, the parents and those who are in the buildings recognize what's being done and are appreciative of that. But other members of the community who do not attend the schools, who do not have children there, they haven't seen what goes on. And they don't appreciate, like they should, the extra hours. Today's society puts so many extra demands on administrators. Today's educational school system is not what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. These people stay well beyond hours working out problems, and yes, it is a vocation. And that's what makes it a vocation. Because that's the type of job, it's a social service agency to some extent. And that's not necessarily appreciated. And I'm sorry that these kinds of discussions have to be so public because I think it's probably embarrassing. But please continue to talk, and please continue to talk in a very positive manner and be objective and open to all discussion. One question I do have, maybe it can't be answered. I'm certainly confused when I hear, and I know this hasn't been settled, but when I hear it brought up that the administrators need to be the ones to bring forward not necessarily a monetary schedule, but maybe the levels, or I see this as a cooperative effort, and I'm not really sure where it has to stem from, who has to initiate the process. I keep hearing that they fell back and that they didn't step forward and whatever. Let's stop blaming and let's just all start moving forward in a cooperative manner, please.
Eleanor, you mean my comment?
I think primarily that's what I
believe
heard.
that, I've heard a lot said about micromanagement. And I think you would agree with me that when it comes to an organizational chart, we should at least be reacting to the recommendation of Dr. Bose as we did. I may have disagreed, but certainly he at least was the one to come forward and recommend an organizational chart for the employees of which he has the administrative responsibility for. And I think that if I were to sit here and say that we as a board is going to sit down and get to work and tell Dr. Bose this is how he's going to have to structure his employees without his input being sought, I think he'd be coming up here with a very heavy criticism for us in micromanagement. I do at least believe Dr. Bose should, particularly when we are talking mid-level and below. He himself is the one who brought forward an organizational chart on his cabinet. We as a board have an opportunity to certainly state our differences or agreements with the organizational chart, and we certainly can vote against what he may recommend. But that's an administrative responsibility to evaluate what the work schedule is. We have 210-day employees, we have 220-day employees, we have 12-month employees. We have positions that have job responsibilities and duties that you don't necessarily see in writing.
Ladies, we got to wrap up.
And so I'm just saying, if that's what your concern would be, I think it's quite opposite to the philosophy I've heard yourself espoused many times regarding administrative duties and authority.
I know we're out of time, so I'll stop, but that's not what I thought I heard you say. I thought it was a different matter and not the organizational chart.
I didn't believe it should be the NPAIA necessarily as an organization. It should be an administrative responsibility, whether it was Dr. Bose or whether he'd like to assign it to personnel.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Allen, very much. Anybody else, please, in the audience? You sure? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. At the last board meeting, I had mentioned that there was going to be a change in how we conduct school educational business here at North Penn. For many, many years, we ran it under a system where there were liaisons assigned to topic and subject areas, and reports were then given at a work session from that, or at an action meeting from that liaison. Essentially, administrative recommendations or initiatives that were brought to the board for assignment or for board action were formulated between that liaison or two with a group of administrators or teachers or personnel, and then brought to a committee meeting. It didn't give real opportunity for all members of the board to feel like they were on the ground floor, nor does it give an opportunity for the community to be in the ground floor. I asked Solicitor Bartle if he would explain the responsibilities to the committee system in terms of advertising, conduction of business, etc., because of his area of expertise, not only as our solicitor, but also a solicitor for municipal governments that handle committee systems this way. Mr. Hill functioned under that system in previous board service, and when I came here from elected municipal government, that's what we did there also. So there's at least 3 of us familiar with this system, and I'll probably start out slow, but I think eventually it'll be best for all of us. Solicitor, if you would.
Thank you, President Magel. Essentially, what the board is determined to do is to move away from the liaison system, as President Magel has described it, and move toward a committee system. The committee system obviously will be different. There will be 3 members, as have been appointed to the various committees, 3 members of the school board. So the actual committee will be made up of board members and only of board members. Now, that certainly does not preclude the possibility that members of the administration would attend. Certainly does not preclude the possibility that members of the public would attend. There is a legal requirement under Pennsylvania law that if you are going to have a committee meeting of the agency, in other words, committee meetings of the board, as opposed to the liaison system which we had previously used, that those committee meetings be publicly advertised and that they be open to the public. Obviously, they are subject to all of the same requirements with respect to executive session and the like as board meetings would be subject to. This will actually do a number of things, and President Magel has asked that I essentially speak a little bit to the committee system generally. What it does, as she has alluded to, is it allows the board members to be more well-versed with respect to issues that they learn about in the particular committee meetings, rather than an individual board member or 2 being a liaison to the administration and learning specifically about it from administrators, coming back into the committee of the whole and sharing that information. There will actually be a public meeting of the committee members, the 3-person committee, and other board members may attend, members of the public may attend, and so specific issues that are of interest will not be relayed from the administration to a particular board member or members for discussion at the committee of the whole, but rather will be discussed in the committee meeting. You've heard from Mr. Sierpinski earlier this evening, who came forward with a memorandum concerning the Community Relations and Policy Committee, the North Penn School District Computer Network and Internet Policy. Obviously, if that matter is handled in a committee meeting that is open to the public, there'd be an opportunity for more focus on that particular issue, more dialogue with members of the public, and more interaction with members of the board should they decide to come to that particular committee meeting. It's my experience that the majority of municipalities in the North Penn School District and across Montgomery County rely primarily on the committee system rather than a liaison representative to the administration. I see no benefit of the liaison system that would not be afforded under the committee system, and certainly it seems that there would be numerous benefits under the committee system that would not be otherwise available under the prior liaison system. So based upon the board's assertion to me that is the direction in which they want to go, it's my advice then that there should be a regularly scheduled meeting of each of the committees that need a regularly scheduled meeting. Obviously, there are certain meet and discuss committees and the like that this wouldn't necessarily pertain to, but from a standpoint of community relations and policy, for example, we should have a regularly yearly schedule of committee meetings It's recommended by the School Boards Association, Pennsylvania School Boards Association, that it take place essentially on the same day of every month. The requirements of the law would be that the yearly schedule would be advertised 3 days before the first regular meeting, and then special meetings may take place upon 24 hours legal notice, just the same as the legal requirements for these particular committee meetings and for the normal board meetings. So that's if that's the direction in which the board will move, then that would be my advice with respect to the publication notice and the opening of those particular individual committee meetings to members of the public.
Solicitor, if the board's comfortable with hosting monthly committee meetings as we get started, because a school calendar has already been produced and placed out in the public, would that work?
But if you had if you wanted to put together a special meeting, a special committee meeting, as Mr. Sierpinski, for example, has discussed this evening, you can do that and advertise it with 24 hours notice. However, the regular meetings of the committee, just like the regular meetings of the board, are to be advertised with, and that is in the event that all these committees are to have regular meetings. I mean, you have to decide that, which of these committee meetings need them and which don't.
Which do not.
But if there is going to be a regular monthly meeting, then prior to the first regular monthly meeting of the year, there should be a 3-day advertisement containing all the dates, and then if there's going to be a special meeting that is different from those, then 24 hours notice of publication is appropriate.
Most municipalities handle all matters under 3 committees: Finance and Administration, Public Safety, Public Works, and all those matters fall under there somehow, some way. As you can see, we have quite a number of assignments and always have. And to just take so many school district assignments, because our governmental body is such a large one and pretty all-encompassing, 3 categories just wouldn't do justice. So again, in municipalities, they generally will hold one night a month for their committee meetings, and they would meet in different rooms, which also made it difficult from time to time if you community members had an interest to attend to each. They're not going to get to each one equally and hear everything at the same time. So maybe on a month-to-month schedule to get started would be best for us, because there are some topics in some committees that are high profile and in the driver's seat right now, and there's other committees that are not. A segue to that is Technology Committee meeting 1/13/98 at 6 o'clock. And the Community Relations and Policy Committee that same evening will meet after the Technology Committee meeting has adjourned. You will notice on both of these committees from the sheet that I handed out that the members of Community Relations and Policy of Sierpinski, Hill, and Mosey are also 3 integral members of the Technology Committee. So that dovetails nicely, and all 3 members are needed and necessary at that meeting. So I'll repeat, on 1/13/98, we'll start at 6 o'clock with Technology, its own committee meeting. They will adjourn, and we'll go into Community Relations and Policy to discuss internet policy only. Okay?
Madam President?
Yes, sir.
Could you clear with whoever's in charge of facilities where it's going to be in the building? I mean, is this room available?
You're assuming rooms are open.
Right. We have to make sure the rooms are available, too.
Not a good assumption, yeah.
That's true.
Well, I think what we can do is we can call the meetings, and then we can be notified later this week what rooms are available.
Well, certainly if folks show up here at the building, if it's not in this room, it would be over there, or, certainly it's going to be in this building at
I
this
just
point.
want to ask the solicitor a question, if I may, in
Sure.
terms of times. If we post the time, for example, we're meeting Technology next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Do we have to keep it at that time every month, or, because we all have business commitments and, different things come up? Adjust the date that we have to be.
Well, you can change it any way you want. The real question is in developing some sort of consistency to the advertisement. In other words, there is nothing that precludes you from having the January meeting at 6 o'clock and the February meeting at 8 o'clock. The problem becomes that that's 2 separate advertisements probably, or more words in a given advertisement, if that's the way you're going to set it out. But there's absolutely no requirement that it be at a uniform time. It just seems to fit well into everybody's schedule, and it also gives the other committees some indication as to when your committee meeting will be. So for example, if another committee chairman that might have you as a member knows that your committee meeting with you as chairman is on a given night, then he or she will be less likely to schedule it at the same time and same place.
What prompts the question is that I'm chairman of the Buildings and Grounds Facility, and Mr. Schilling serves with me as well as Mr. Allen and Mrs. Scher.
Right.
We know that we broke ground at the high school. NAP is going to be coming on board. I just foresee, and I'm not looking for a problem, but I'm trying to be realistic. We may call a meeting for 4 o'clock the second Wednesday of every month. All of a sudden, Art says, hold on, the architects are there, I'm not going to be able to make that meeting next week.
Right. And if that is the case,
there may be a situation where he may only be able to give me 24 hours. Right. How do we handle that?
Well, it depends on, there are provisions under the law for emergency meetings, but they better be emergencies.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's just the conducting of routine business, then he has to give you a date more than 24 hours away so that you can get the added report.
Or we can conduct a meeting without him if we have to.
That's perfectly appropriate. I'm just responding to the advertising requirements, however the logistics work out in terms of who attends, that's your business.
Yeah. I think the problem we have is we're going to have to really coordinate some of these dates, because I know that board members are going to want to sit in on certain meetings.
Question.
Also with actions, we should plan our actions around our normally scheduled action meeting and try to avoid special action meetings as much as possible. That's already set in stone around
I
here.
think we could, that would be nice.
Right. Mrs. Scher.
When you talk about the advertisement being more efficient on a particular day, on finance, we were considering, say, it being the last Tuesday or the first Tuesday of the month at a set time, rather than picking a date, looking for a particular day that's sort of guided, similar to what our action meeting is, the third Thursday, and the committee meeting works from there. Only in seeking a date that we feel is timely towards preparing for business that may want to come forward to a committee of the whole. Would that be sufficient? Not to have to go through the calendar and necessarily outline the specific date from January through December, but to rather say that the Finance Committee would be meeting, say, the last Tuesday of each month at, say, 3 p.m.
You would do that. You would also outline the dates of those particular last Tuesdays, and that would be in your newspaper advertisement.
Okay, so we would need to take up the space with the advertisement for that.
The only question I have, Vicki, if I can interrupt, is we're going to be going into budgets. I know, We're going to be going into budgets.
But they're not the committee meetings.
That may require more.
That's separate advertisements. Our budgets go through a separate advertising process. I'd like to also ask that as we move forward, and we're working on these committee meetings as opposed to what we are used to in the format of our committee of the whole, is it participatory for the members of the community that show up, as well as those board members who are not assigned to the committee? Or is it simply there for?
No, any committee meeting would be subject to the same rules and requirements with respect to your audience of citizens, yes.
Okay, so that would also be coming forward, because my understanding was that those who have them, it wasn't necessarily participatory for those who showed. I myself am particularly interested to see the collective calendar, and while the other school districts mainly have 3, perhaps 4, when we are dealing with 9 major standing committees, then there are subcommittees that are separate and apart, perhaps another 12 or 13, such as, I may be on high school and NAP, but that's not on facilities, buildings, and grounds. We have the other committees that are here, and while it works beneficial for the opportunity for other people to attend these informational sessions, I'm wondering, will we still be bringing all of this relevant information through to the committee of the whole? Because there is no way any one of us as human beings could attend all these various meetings that are going to be conducting business throughout
No, it's
the
my
district.
understanding you would still have your committee of the whole or work session as you would describe it, yes.
And it would still
Mr.
come
Chair, if I
forward,
can
because
interrupt
I'm
it.
looking and I'm saying, well,
As chairman of the Buildings and Facilities, I haven't discussed this with Mr. Schilling because it's the first time I've seen him since the holidays, but with the NAP and the high school expansion, that's probably going to take up majority of our business. And I plan to consolidate that into the buildings and facilities meeting. I don't plan to have separate meetings for all three.
Well, then perhaps it needs to come at the front end,
I
because you're
think-
also gonna evolve into other business that's
Well,
facilities,
but-
buildings, and grounds that is not
But I just
specific.
think that even though Mrs. Mingle was kind enough to break those out as two separate projects, Mr. Schilling and I have worked before on buildings and grounds, and
Right.
there's no reason we just can't handle buildings and grounds, high school, and NAP. It's just one big meeting.
Well, I think you'll agree, though, if you look at all these other committees that are gonna be active, it looks like a magnificent task to be scheduling all these meetings
We're gonna have
that are
individual
routine.
agendas for our meetings.
Sure.
I mean, there's gonna be
Right.
numerous
I know,
issues, like with mine, K through 12 curriculum.
I'm saying, Sharice, it's one thing to work with, trying to schedule and keep up with 3 different activities, 3
Okay.
different committees, but we're talking over 20 here.
Okay,
Many are very active.
What, I guess the best thing to do is we all come up with some kind of ideas for dates, and we'll just have to work it out and see the
Absolutely,
best
and with
time
the
we-
administrator that you're working on with those committees.
Yeah, because
Sure.
I think she has a legitimate concern. I don't think any one of us will be here 5 nights a week.
No.
That could possibly be.
Then we'll be taking over administrative offices, too. We'll be shoving all you guys
Okay,
out.
folks, we have, Ralph Redcamp is up for either reappointment or we need to appoint someone new to the North Penn Authority. That appointment, Dr. Bose, has to go on to the action agenda next, at the action meeting. So between now and then, if you have recommendations for that authority,
Is he
please-
still willing to continue?
I don't know
It's a
that.
tough job. I was on it
Any,
for many
uh,
years. It's a hard job.
Let's find out if he's willing to continue too.
Meets once a year for
That's
5
one thing that
days.
can be done, and any other recommendations that will be brought to my attention. Also, I need an IU member from this board. I have an idea. I can get a hat, and I can put 8 names in it, and I can have one of these fine students at the camera pick a name. And I will get very desperate by next Thursday, because I've been as nice as I can possibly be about it.
Have you had her over for dinner yet, or?
So, Mrs. Krieger, if it's late on your part.
I nominate Sharice Brigger.
Yeah, I second.
Not fair.
I second.
Not fair.
You have to get elected. Send out a blank resume, Sharice.
If anybody
Index
has,
card.
Mrs. Abrams, you want to go? I see that hand.
Move to adjourn.
Can I ask a question about this committee schedule meeting?
I'm sorry, you're right. I have to open that to the public. Thank you, Mrs. Abrams. I was just getting anxious to adjourn. I'm sorry. We have an executive session, please, members of the press, an executive session after this evening for matters of personnel and potential litigation.
Why do you have such difficulty filling that? I don't, Linda Abram up or Gwyneth, it's not that bad a thing, right? I go to the IU for meetings all the time. With regards to these meetings, just so that I can understand, I'm on overload, as I'm sure many of you are. You're gonna have your Tuesday, Thursday regularly scheduled meeting, your work sessions and your action meetings. These are in addition to that, and I assume one of the ideas is to promote greater input by community members and what have you for specific, okay. And the process of notification is through the newspaper, did I hear that?
They are required to be legally advertised, just the same as these meetings are required to be legally advertised. That is what we have to do, is provide that notification in the newspaper.
Okay.
However, this district can advertise it on the television channel,
In
or
any
they can
forms we
advertise it
wish.
Okay,
in any other
okay.
format that they want.
Plus, here we are at a work session, and I'm announcing dates for the 13th.
Yeah, and I
And
know.
then we have action meeting next Thursday. There could be more dates by then, and we'll keep reading them into the minutes.
Okay, but they can come separate, they can be announced separate from the Tuesday, Thursday committee action meetings, can they not? Or
Yes.
do you, can,
Yes, they take place at times other than just Tuesdays and Thursdays.
but the announcement of those meetings can occur separate from the.
They could, but I really will try for
Okay.
that not to happen.
That's-
Even though we're covered by the advertisement, that doesn't do what we want, which is involve the community.
Exactly.
And
I get-
if we do it that way, and not enough community, how many people really go through
You might be
those
talking to each
public
other.
notices?
Right, exactly, that's my
So by announcing
concern.
at these public meetings on the Tuesday and Thursday, it does what we really wish, which is to include more of you in on the ground floor.
Okay.
When you look at what happened tonight with the internet policy, there's a lot of a good feeling, there's an esprit de corps that's beginning to develop. That deserves its own meeting.
Yeah, I understand that, but I guess because it's a new process For instance, I know many people would be interested in coming to the technology meeting. Now, I feel like responsible to go back and say, hey, get that 13th date
Absolutely.
on your calendar.
Absolutely.
And, 6 o'clock is a tough time. But nonetheless, the other thing is something like the redistricting for elementary. Would that come under the NAP expansion? Is that a special meeting? How does something unique like that fit into all this, or is it completely separate?
Okay, that would be a separate committee assignment. It would come under facilities, buildings, and grounds, but that's a specific committee assigned to that task. But that hasn't been assigned as of yet. It's not right.
Okay, but it would become one of these type of committee meetings, if you would.
It could.
When I served on that, it came under curriculum, Mrs. Mango. When I, last redistrict we had at the middle school, I was secondary education liaison, and I handled that as under curriculum.
Are you trying to be
Because you
polite, or are you
want to
trying to stab her in the back?
Now you want me to.
So redistricting is a curriculum issue?
It could, yeah, it could be. It'll be announced.
You'll work on it, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
It'll be announced. But it's not right. Mr. Graziano, board members, please. It's
I don't want
probably
to prolong this any
11:15.
more than we have to, but I do have a couple of comments and a question. Number one, I like this system. It's going to definitely bring out more of the community, I think, and get them more involved in what's going on. Number two, one thing it points out very clearly is a comment was made previously about the amount of time that administrators put into their work, and it is respected and appreciated. It also points out very clearly the amount of time that you people put into this as unpaid volunteers, and we all appreciate that also. One other thing, if I might address this to Mr. Bartle, that one of the committees, technology, has 5 members. Is there any concern that there's a majority of the board on a committee like that?
No, it's in public.
No concern. These meetings will be advertised and they are available to the public, so you can have any number of board members at any one of these meetings, so long as they're advertised.
Okay, and there is no intent, am I correct, that there will be no votes taken during that?
There will be no votes taken of the board. The committee can make a recommendation, for example, to the board, but again, that's all in a publicly advertised meeting, so that's perfectly appropriate.
Okay. And the final item is some of these committees, and I'm thinking specifically technology, I'd like to see maybe the format a little different. Maybe more of a dialogue process rather than, the 3 or 4 members talk and then we get an audience of citizens. Maybe more of a dialogue with some of the items that are being discussed. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Gentlemen want to speak.
We forgot our.
I thought you were getting up to leave.
Motion
Can I
to
reopen?
reopen.
Motion to
Motion to
open.
open up the meeting?
Open it.
And Mrs. Olkowski, who else? I'm sorry. We should, Mrs. Olkowski, anybody else? Will you accept my
Motion to
apology?
reopen?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to say that for these committee meetings, I think the reason for them is to invite the public, so if we can keep in mind when the public can attend. I know a lot of the meetings in the past with the liaison system happen during the day. I don't know, I am one person who can't make meetings during the day because I work during the day. I don't know if most of the people in this community work during the day or at night. At any rate, if we could consider those times for the public's sake. And also, from experience, I found it difficult to have 2 committee meetings on the same evening, one right after the other, unless they are specifically short. When you get conversations going, they can go on and on and on, and they become late. So, if those things could just be considered.
Okay, those are things being considered by board members too. Most of the board members are employed during the day, and so that's difficult for them too.
Jane Olkowski, 2 Munson Township. I just want to say that I welcome the change back to committee meetings, and I stress back to them because up until the mid-'80s, this is how the school board operated. Often there were very few, if any, members of the public at those meetings, but the opportunity for them was there. I found that most board members would attend, even those not on the committees, and I believe the board and those members of the general public who chose to attend had a much deeper knowledge of what actually was going on and the intricacies of issues. And I've been very frustrated out in the audience the last several years under the liaison system often wondering when committee recommendations would be made, just what process of osmosis, when there were no committee meetings, was involved in how these decisions were made without any meetings. And it was very frustrating not to be able to have any opportunity to speak before things reached either this full board committee meeting or the action meeting. And I think this new setup should be much more beneficial for the public and the board. And I really don't think it's going to be the horror that people imagine with 20 committee meetings every month. I don't recall if we had quite as many committees back in the 70s and early 80s, but often those meetings were extremely short, a half hour, 15 minutes, and several of them could be held at night and be gotten through in fairly quick fashion. And having them the same night also gave the public an opportunity to come out and hear several of them without having to be here every night of the week either. And I do think this is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Mrs. Olkowski, you were a reporter then, were you not?
Yes.
So even for reporting purposes in your profession, it was better this way?
Yes.
Super.
You could help us schedule.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So-
Twice, sold.
So